Afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of our public hearing and public meeting of today, December 17th. We are resuming this afternoon with public hearing item number 5. And with that, I will turn it over to Director of Preservation, Corey Harala.
Thank you, Sarah. Starting with public hearing item number 5, that's LPC 25-04728. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1265, Lot 7501. 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Rockefeller Center individual and interior landmark. This is a commercial skyscraper connected to a Western Tower extension designed by a consortium of architects known as the Associated Architects and built 1931 to 33 as part of an Art Deco style office, commercial and entertainment complex. And the application is to replace neon signage using substitute materials and to install new signage.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Cass Stackelberg, Higgins, Kreisbarth and Partners. I'm joined by Pietro Martinoni from Tishman Speyer, our client, and virtually we're joined by Richard DeMarco and Rich Moon from Montroy DeMarco Architecture, and my colleague Sarah Ripple, who will be available. I'll be making the presentation, and we're all available for discussion and any questions that you may have. As Corey mentioned, the scope of work is limited to the marquees at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. This is a site plan of Rockefeller Center, an individual landmark designated in 1985. 30 Rockefeller Plaza is shown with a blue dash around it, kind of the centerpiece of the center. And the two marquees may be tough to see. I'll just point here and here on 49th Street and 50th Street. Those are highlighted in red dash, so you understand sort of their location at the building. And the building itself really has 3 entries: those 2 marquees, the mid-block entries, and then on the Rockefeller Plaza side, the entry into the main elevator lobby. On the west side on 6th Avenue, that's a separate building, 1250 Avenue of the Americas. The overall scope, there are really 2 components that are part of our application. One is installing LED lights in place of the neon tubing that is on the marquee. And as part of that, we are retaining the stainless steel letter forms, particularly at the Rainbow Room and NBC Studios, and replacing it in the mid-tier. This signage, as from what we can tell, the red lettering, the NBC and the Rainbow Room, we believe may all post-date designation, and I'll explain why we think that in just a moment. The top of the the observation deck signage dates to about circa 2005, when the observation deck was reopened. It had been closed for decades, and Tishman Speyer reopened the observation deck in 2005, and at that time that blue lettering was installed. I'll also just explain on the proposed rendering on the right, where we're showing changing from observation deck to top of the rock. That change actually in text was approved last year under an overall application that you all saw for changes at the observation deck. But we're here today to propose changes to the technology from the from the neon to the LED. So it is that change from neon to LED, but the other component is the introduction of 30 Rockefeller Plaza, just building address signage on the front face of the marquee. This may seem remarkable, but people have a hard time finding the building. And we'll talk about that in a minute. There is really only one sign on the building that calls out the address. So it's important, given the number of visitors who come to the center every day, particularly from out of town. So that is the second component. And I'll just mention the change from neon to LED is something you all saw up this summer. The Apollo Theater went through a similar application. We've worked with Tishman Speyer on new LED signage for a marquee that the commission approved on 6th Avenue. The commission also approved the change from neon at the top of the building, the giant 25-foot tall GE letters, to Comcast. That change was also a change from neon to LED. So this is a technological change that has been in front of the commission, both high on a building, but also at pedestrian scale. Some historical images on the left, obviously a photograph, this from the 1930s. And you just get a sense of the scale of the building and the marquee. This is the 49th Street side of the building. You can see it near the left margin of the slide of the photograph. On the top middle, an early line drawing also from the 30s. This is before the Rainbow Room opened, so the Rainbow Room signage wasn't actually across the top of the marquee, but just indicating NBC Studios called out the scale of that. And then the photo on the upper right from the 1940s, once the Rainbow Room had opened and the lettering running across the top of that marquee. This is a view west on 50th Street. You can see the elevated station in the top of the photograph, and you can just make out the illuminated letters. And the line drawings at the bottom of the slide, just again illustrating the position of the marquees relative to the overall elevation. And I think it's in the considerations of the appropriateness, obviously part of it is the effect on the building. And I think it's obviously a very large building. So looking at some recent photographs, so an existing photograph on the right margin, and then on the left is a photo from the 1980s when the building was designated. And this is, I believe, the 49th Street marquee, illustrating that the NBC Studios signage was not on the marquee at the time of designation. And we think the other signage for Rainbow Room may have actually been removed at some point as well. So the signage that is there today, we think may actually post-date designation. Both this would be the red lettering, and we know that the blue lettering was added in the 2000, the early aughts. The line drawings in the middle are from that 2003 presentation to the commission, just illustrating the changes that were proposed at that time for the introduction of the signage for the observation roof. Ultimately, was decided to say observation deck, but you can see what was approved back at that time. I'll also just mention that part of this proposal is sort of related to maintenance, and this was actually a part of the discussion back over the summer about the Apollo. Yesterday, and we couldn't add the photos here, but yesterday was a rainy day. The word rainbow was out all day because it was raining, and it couldn't be changed until the rain stopped. So I remember the discussion very clearly from the commissioners, and there was a sort of a thought about it. It just doesn't look good for the landmark when there are letters that are out. And this is not about maintenance. This is just about weather and technology. When it rains and when it's even high humidity sometimes, neon just goes out. So yesterday there were letters and whole words that were out for the whole day. And then they came back in the morning, I believe today, to basically dry out the technology and get the lighting working again. So the change to LED obviously eliminates that concern. So a detailed photograph of the lettering itself. Our proposal includes basically retrofitting the stainless steel letters NBC Studios and the Rainbow Room top and bottom, retaining the stainless steel letter forms and just introducing the LED within those letter forms. And the observation deck, which is more recent vintage, that'll be actually rebuilt in stainless steel to match the detailing of the other letters. I'll also just point out that there is, in any given day, there are different intensities of light and even different colors of light, which you can see in the photograph. Obviously, the goal it was to have some consistency in that originally, but over time, this changes. I'll also note that I've learned recently that there is mercury vapor that's part of the neon lighting. So going away from that technology to LED eliminates that. And of course, there's a significant energy efficiency. From what we understand from the manufacturer, it's about a 10% energy usage compared to neon. So from the LED compared to the neon lighting, it's 10%. Of the same energy used in the neon lighting. So just a little bit on the wayfinding. So a site plan again. So that red dot here, this is the only place on the entire building where it says 30 Rockefeller Plaza. And so there are 3 primary entries to the building photographed on the right margin. The main Rockefeller Plaza entry, that red circle highlights where that 30 Rockefeller Plaza sign is. And then the 2 entries on the side streets, 49 West 49th Street, 50 West 50th Street. It does not say 30 Rockefeller Plaza on either side. So you understand sort of the challenges that may come about regarding wayfinding, and then photographs of the varying entries. And so on the lower left, photo 3, that's the only place it says 30 Rockefeller Plaza on the building. It's a 4-inch incised letter in the granite. So just for context, you saw the photograph on the lower right, the historic photograph of the NBC, of the 30 Rock marquee. The photo on the left is a commission-approved marquee on the backside of the building. This is at 1250 Avenue of the Americas on 6th Avenue. This was approved by the commission 10 years ago. That was approved with LED technology, lighting technology in stainless steel letter forms, but obviously a reference back to the historic marquees, but the commission approved LED lighting as part of that new marquee. And as I mentioned, the commission at the same time also approved the change from neon to LED up at the top of the building. And then just some other commission approved marquees across the top, just illustrating the varying technologies, LED lighting on the underside of the technology, of the underside of the marquee at 75 Rockefeller Plaza, and then the existing marquee at 50 Rockefeller Plaza, which is a replication of the one that was there historically. As part of this effort, we working with a manufacturer, we've done mock-ups, a photograph of which you can see sort of a long view looking west on 50th, as well as a detailed view. The intensity and color of the light is very consistent, and most people don't notice a difference. Some of us do, but most people don't notice a difference between the two. And as I said, the letter forms will be reused. This is obviously a mock-up where we recreated the stainless steel letter form just for mock-up purposes, but the forms will be reused as part of this effort. And then a detailed view. So again, this mock-up D is a little bit bigger than the D of studios, but we're going to be reusing that D and just inserting the LED light into that. Some line drawings, just again illustrating where on the building the work is being carried out, both on the 49th and 50th Street sides, in elevation on the top, and then looking at the 6th Avenue elevation, the two extending marquees on the two side streets. In elevation, again, showing the addition of the 30 Rockefeller Plaza lettering, consistent in height to the lowercase lettering on the side of the marquee. And then on the sides, the 10-inch letters top of the rock, and then the retrofit Rainbow Room and NBC Studios lettering. Some detailed drawings existing and proposed. A few things to note, obviously in the existing, because of the technology, there are tubes and wires that form the individual neon tubes. We're able to replicate the breaks in that tubing and the LED, but we're going to sort of fill the holes where the tubing goes to the back of the letters. But dimensionally, and you can see this in section on the lower right side of the slide, the existing and proposed sections, dimensionally, they line up. We've got half-inch front dimensions of the tubes, as well as the LED units, and of course the letter forms will be reused, so those match as well. And similarly, for the tight, smaller letters on the word studios and across the Rainbow Room, reusing the letter forms, matching the dimensions. This is a slide from our presentation back in August that you saw for the Apollo, which included replacing the neon in the Apollo directly sitting on the marquee. So basically the same position as what we're proposing, very close to the sidewalk, as well as the tall blade sign. And then this was a few slides from that presentation. The photos on the right are the mock-up there. So the L and O, day and night, those are the LEDs, and they're directly adjacent to the neon lights in those signs. So just in conclusion, the overall scope that we're proposing, largely reusing materials that we have, the letter forms, the impacts to the historic fabric are very modest. They're just sort of the attachments to the marquee itself. This is, I think, consistent with the approval from a few months ago from up at the Apollo. And then on a sort of a broader scale, I think looking at this street view, looking down 50th Street, in terms of overall appropriateness, I think the wayfinding addition, it's a modest addition, it's a necessary addition. It's being done in a manner sympathetic to the detailing seen elsewhere in the building. This LED upgrade is done in part for energy efficiency. We don't have to have situations where the lighting goes out during the rain, and I think we'll have a very modest visual effect. And then finally, it's consistent with the same technology on the building that has been commission approved on the 6th Avenue side, and of course up at the top of the building as well. Happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
Oh. I guess I can truly appreciate the issue with finding entrances to all of the buildings, actually. Because if you're not within the complex regularly, like, you're like, where's 30, where's 50, it's a kind of a drag. But one thing that is, I'm just wondering if you explored any other options for the building ID than the marquee, because what I think is happening here is it's getting so busy, and everything that you guys, that Rockefeller Plaza does is actually very, well thought out and understated. And it seems that now there's a hodgepodge of, like, okay, we got to put the observation deck up here. Oh, we have to put the rainbow room up here. Oh, no, now we have to throw the building up here. Whereas if you look at other kinds of buildings with marquee, using the Apollo as a good example, like, that's all it says,
Right.
Apollo. And then whatever is actually on the marquee is about what's playing inside.
Right. Right.
So was that a consideration at all?
So
Because you have these two framed, just on either side,
there's sort of poster boxes.
poster boxes.
Right.
And there may be something, they're in there, maybe something nice could have been done there.
Right. So I think, I think the comparison to the Apollo is a good one. I think, when you think about the Apollo Theater, there's kind of one thing happening there. It's a performance venue. There are many things happening at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, and this building from its earliest days, I mean, we have historic, drawings of the studios. Those were attractions. Those were places for the public to come to. The other buildings at the center don't kind of operate the same way. So whether it's the studios or it's the observation deck or it's the rainbow room, many, many other things going on at the building, I think having, this is the place, that the most number of people are coming to, and it's the place on the building to provide wayfinding. So in other words, this building has always been about attracting people, both just in its scale, but also from the earliest days, tours of the studios, that was sort of part of the earliest thing. And that was, front and center. And I think, Pietro can certainly speak to this, but the millions of people who come from out of the city to the building, they're coming to this building. And I think finding the marquee, that is sort of the main entry point for so much of what happens at the building. We could do it at the poster box, and I can go back to this slide.
I'm actually only talking about the address.
I understand.
I'm not talking about the activities.
Right. So I think just sort of understanding the scale of this. So this is, you're referencing.
Yeah.
So, right. So the scale of that is, I think, so modest, and the numbers of people on the street preclude you from this is a photograph without anybody on the street. Certainly this time of the year, but really any time of the year, the streets are so crowded, you wouldn't see that. So I think, putting signage where signage has been historically, to us, makes sense. And it's using the same basic format, a lit sign with a stainless steel, letter form around it. I think adding signage elsewhere on the building probably wouldn't, I don't think you all would be supportive of that. I think there are storefronts, obviously, and then there's the building entry. And so they're incised letters. That's a very typical treatment, but that's not visible. So using the architecture that's there, and using the style of announcing place, that's the thinking behind it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, let's move to testimony and then we'll come back to you. Theodore Grunwald.
I'm Theodore Grunwald, founder of the Alliance to Save the McGraw-Hill Lobby, another McGraw-Hill building, which some of the commissioners will perhaps remember. If you haven't seen this morning's major feature article in New York Magazine /Curb by Christopher Bananos, which went online early this morning, I suggest the commissioners read it. It's a multi-page article. Also, I brought with me today two books, and Chair Lumpy, if you could please share these with the other commissioners, just please
Sure,
pass
thank
them
you.
around. In New York Neon by Thomas Rinaldi, who is New York's greatest living expert on our city's neon signs. Only 84 out of 157, less than half, of the neon signs documented in this book have survived the 12 short years since this book's 2012 publication. The White House, like Rockefeller Center, is an instantly recognizable symbol of American culture and history thanks to the stewardship of Jacqueline Kennedy, who replaced department store reproductions within its rooms with a symbolically meaningful collection of authentic American furnishings and art integral to the place. Rockefeller Center, too, is the nation's showplace. Its walls display and hold what is perhaps the most comprehensive ensemble of American decorative, industrial, and fine arts of its era. Architecture, sculpture, murals, mosaics, textiles, light fixtures, furnishings, and signage together create a unified, enveloping atmosphere still legible after 90 years. The historic streamlined modern marquees of 30 Rock are no less integral to the ensemble and is recognized as among the finest examples of neon signage in the world. Neon is equally representative of an era of American ingenuity, achievement, culture, and history as any White House treasure, and like the balance of Rockefeller Center's very public collection, deserves continued careful conservation and celebration. Significant misrepresentations of facts have been advanced by the South Region's representative concerning the purported energy efficiency, material safety, sustainability, and visual equivalency of LEDs to neon. These misrepresentations are accurately and comprehensively rebuffed in submitted testimony of neon expert Todd Maturaskowitz, which the commission must study and analyze carefully before making any final decisions today. Neon is not maintenance-free, neither is bronze. Both materials require sometimes finicky and expensive care, yet no one is proposing removal and replacement of Rockefeller Center's bronze signage by Easy Care fiberglass reproductions. The commission has a charter-defined mission to protect our city's cultural and artistic heritage. And I'm just going to wrap up. As a child, I was entranced by the September 1972 National Geographic, which featured Japan's living national treasures, quote, preservers of important intangible cultural properties, who were recognized for carrying out threatened or so-called obsolete arts. And it's in the interest of American culture, our city and our local economy and of Rockefeller Center to keep the art of neon and its practitioners alive. And celebrate.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Article from
Jeremy Woodhoff?
Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you very much.
I'm Jeremy Woodhoff, and today I'm speaking for myself. By the way, I was there yesterday morning and the signs were working just fine. I have pictures. Other testimony will describe some of the inaccuracies and exaggerated claims the applicants have made about the viability, efficiency, and safety of historic neon lighting. I'm going to discuss the inappropriateness of this proposal in historic preservation terms. The difference between historic neon lighting and modern substitutes like the proposed plastic LED strips is visually quite evident when seen in person. Photographic comparisons are nearly useless, though you will be shown some today to make the point. It's akin to the difference between wood clapboards and vinyl siding, or to use a dated example, between real brick and stone and Garden State brick face. The ability to both see and appreciate differences like these is critical for those engaged in the field of historic preservation. Similarly, the protection of historic technologies, of the patina of age, of subtle details, of craftsmanship, all of which are encompassed by these signs, is critical to the successful regulation of historic properties. And if walking beneath these nearly 100-year-old marquees with their glowing neon letters, an experience shared by millions of New Yorkers and visitors across generations, if this experience doesn't grab you and resonate, then perhaps historic preservation is not your calling. This commission expects ordinary building owners to maintain the historic features of their buildings: painted wood porches, brick facades, slate roofs, cast iron columns. Is the owner of Rockefeller Center, an immaculately maintained, world-renowned complex, really suggesting they can't maintain these historic neon signs? It's an absurd position. At the hearing for the Apollo Theater sign, some of you expressed regret at the loss of its historic neon, but voted in favor of the change anyway. New Yorkers, and not only preservationists, have stated their regrets about other losses as well. Penn Station, the Dangler Mansion, the Hotel Pennsylvania. But you are the Landmarks Commission. The public, your constituents, turn to you, not so you can voice your regrets, but so you can take action to protect what's historically, architecturally, and culturally important to us. A neon sign may not be Penn Station, but I can think of few things as iconic about our historic 20th century city as its neon signs. It's time to stop regretting and start preserving. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? John Graham?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society repeats its opposition for the replacement of historic neon signs with substitute materials in the form of plastic LED light strips. This commission typically opposes the use of substitute materials at individual landmarks, especially at lower floors. This is true even when the appearance of the substitute material is quite like the original. And these LED replacements look no more like neon than vinyl siding looks like wood clapboard. You need only compare the building's new 6th Avenue marquee and its LED letters with the historic neon marquees on 49th and 50th Streets. Nothing matches the glow of neon. The quality of the light and the intricacies of how the signs are put together, their individual artistry and the craftsmanship that produces them are very evident and quite different from LED substitutes. These differences are often not discernible in photographs. You have all received testimony in the form of a slide presentation by a neon expert. This testimony debunks the false and exaggerated claims made by the applicant regarding energy efficiency, longevity, environmental sustainability, and toxicity of neon signs versus LEDs. The protection of the physical fabric, technology, artistry, craftsmanship, and visual light quality of these signs are well within the Commission's mandate to protect our architectural, historic, and cultural heritage. Diarists in early and mid-19th century New York documented the astonishing growth and change of the city. They described the disappearance of once common old Dutch houses with their little bricks and street-facing step gables. One day, wrote one of the diarists, he woke up and realized there was not a single Dutch house left. Today, we have the understanding, foresight, and laws to ensure these kinds of avoidable but irreversible losses do not occur. Does this commission want to be remembered for approving the loss of some of the city's last iconic neon signs, symbols of the vibrancy, dynamism, and glamour of mid-20th century New York? We ask you, commissioners, to deny this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? Yes, please come up.
Let's just take one and pass that way. Take one and pass that way. Hey, my name is Tom Rinaldi. I've come to offer my opposition to the proposed LED retrofit of the NBC Studios marquees at Rockefeller Center. My thoughts on this subject, such as they are informed by the years I spent researching and documenting neon signs in New York City for a book I authored called New York Neon, which is floating around here somewhere. I have tried to organize my remarks around 3 points. First, it has long occurred to me that neon is one of the very last bastions of the technology that is meant to be repaired rather than just thrown away when it breaks. I suggest, therefore, that it's misleading to frame an argument for LEDs over neon in sustainability terms. The energy usage figures provided by the applicants are grossly skewed But regardless, it's important to point out that the proposed plastic LED light strips have a life expectancy of just a few years, after which time they are instant e-waste, tossed out and replaced every few years in perpetuity. Furthermore, neon tubes do not in fact contain mercury, while argon tubes do contain mercury. The only argon tubes on these marquees are blue tubes that are a recent addition to the sign. LEDs, meanwhile, are known to contain amounts of arsenic and gallium in their diodes. Neon may use nominally more energy, but the sustainability argument here comes down strongly for neon. Second, I suggest that it is important in this context to understand neon as an architectural material. The neon tubes on these marquees are not something akin to a light bulb and a lamp that we would replace with an LED bulb at home, put the shade back on and be done with it. I suggest that neon in this instance should be regarded as the commission regards materials like terracotta required to be replaced in kind where in close proximity to the sidewalk. This leads to the third point I'd like to make, which is that even if we disregard the arguments above and accept, for example, the precedent of the Apollo Theater retrofit, as has been put forth, I suggest that there's a critical difference here in the proximity of this installation to the sidewalk. I went to Rockefeller Center last night to check the height of the marquees from the sidewalk, it's 10 feet, and was reminded that this argument is in fact already demonstrated by the LED lit facsimile marquee that was installed at 30 Rock's 6th Avenue entrance. The difference between the LED marquees and the neon marquees is even more stark than I remember. I'd invite the commissioners to go and see it for themselves, but I've provided some photos for today's hearing. The positioning of the marquees at the sidewalk level would make it jarringly obvious to anyone that the materiality of the marquees has been significantly altered by such a replacement. While neon is becoming increasingly a specialty craft, we have not yet reached a time when it is impractical to install and maintain neon signs, as evidenced by the many businesses around the city that are still doing so voluntarily today. One day it may become impractical to do so, but for now, this is an opportunity for the commission to take an action that helps maintain neon glass bending as a heritage craft rather than an action that only helps usher in its demise. I thank the commission for this opportunity to express my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? All right, not seeing anyone else, I will turn it over to Gregory Kala to invite our members in the public on the Zoom to testify.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is George Calderaro. George Calderaro, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. Hello, George Calderaro. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm George Calderaro, a board member of the Art Deco Society of New York. Rockefeller Center in general and 30 Rockefeller Plaza in particular is one of the most iconic American and New York City Art Deco landmarks. The owners of these buildings capitalize on and monetize its Art Deco features and should be obligated to preserve the current, historically accurate signage, one of the most prominent extant examples of deco neon in New York City, an historic material that is fast disappearing. The style and technology of these world-renowned neon signs is historic fabric, and the LPC should maintain its policy of disapproving replacement materials of historic fabric this close to street level. Neon is increasingly rare and preserved in museums around the world, but we have neon in its original iconic location here, where it should be preserved rather than relegated to a museum or worse. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC does not support the change from neon signage to LED in this location because the intricacy of the neon sign, including its joints, connections, and loops, are part of the sign's design. We believe that detailing should be preserved. Relatedly, we are not convinced that it's necessary to change the words observation deck to top of the rock. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Todd Masuzowicz. Todd Masuzowicz, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Todd Matuszewicz, and I'm speaking as a member of Save the Signs Colorado, candidate for a master's in historic preservation at the University of Colorado, Denver, and a person who has worked in the neon industry for over 20 years. I'd like to thank the petitioners for their beautiful photos and construction drawings of the Rockefeller sign, including on slide 8, a beautiful photograph of Radio City Music Hall in the rain. Rain is not a detriment to neon. That's not part of the technological flaws. That's a component flaw, so that's a maintenance issue. The issue is often framed as neon versus LED, but it's more correctly neon compared to LED. Each has its place. The comparison is complicated, and hard, fast numbers tend to be cherry-picked data. So like must be compared with like. They use the NBC neon strokes as their example, and so that's what I will use in this one. The NBC neon letters are neon. There is no mercury in those tubes. Neon is non-toxic, and it's in the air that you are now breathing. LED neons contain gallium arsenide, which is highly toxic. Another distinction is the difference between energy as efficient and energy more efficient. The NBC neon, just rough calculation, is 90% as efficient as LED. The LED is only 10% more efficient based on rough numbers. I sent those in the deck. And the neon, that NBC neon, that can be repaired. That's in the deck as well. NBC neon is 100% repairable, 100% recyclable. That LED is not. The NBC neon LED replacement does not meet 8 of the 11 substitute material criteria in the NPS briefs 16 and 25. There's no NPS LED 5150 criteria. As we say in the industry, 51 feet at 50 miles an hour does not mean it looks the same. NBC neon is fabricated locally. There are shops in town, and one of them probably made those neons. The LED is not made locally. NBC neon is a preservation craft, and LED is not. At preservation conferences, they also often talk about how to preserve these crafts. And the answer is simple, that preservationists have to support them. LEDs are the vinyl windows of the sign industry. They're cheap, irreparable, highly profitable, and easy to sell with a short life expectancy leading to full replacement. If you call a window company, they will sell you vinyl windows. If you call a sign company, they will likely sell you plastic neon. No one would dare to put a fake plastic tree in Rockefeller Center. So why would you put fake plastic neon on the Rockefeller Plaza marquee? I thank you for your consideration and hope that you will oppose this proposal.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 5 recommends approval, and we also received 2 additional letters from individuals prior to the hearing that was shared with the commissioners. And with that, I'll bring back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to the comments?
Thank you. So a few things. One, I think on the maintenance issue, we have photographs showing the lights being out yesterday, whether this is a maintenance issue or not. The rain causes the lighting to go out. It caused the same up at the Apollo. It causes it here. That's what I've heard, and it was in force yesterday. This applicant is not saying that they cannot maintain their signs. They're just pointing out the fact that when it rains, the signs go out, and they address it as quickly as they can. I think also the illustrations that were passed around just by one of the folks providing testimony of the signage on 6th Avenue and the distinctions between the neon lettering on the 49th and 50th Street sides and the LED lettering on 6th. That lettering is 10-year-old technology. It looks very different. I'm talking about just this was just passed around. It looks very different than the mock-ups that I just showed on slide 8 or 9. It was in the deck. So I think the replication of the image is actually much closer. It is not one for one. We don't claim that it is, but it's much closer in appearance than what's shown and what was passed around. I think it's also, we're talking about replacement materials a little bit. Certainly this applicant, is not and never would propose replacement of the acres of limestone or bronze or any of that. And they maintain that material just like they maintain the artwork on the exterior of these buildings and throughout the lobbies. But I think, drawing an analogy to this scope and replacing brick with brick face or wood shingles with vinyl siding is really, not accurate. And I think this commission and the staff have noted the acceptability of replacement materials, whether it's masonry or pressed metal or other features, whether they're, wherever they are on the building. And I think it's also sort of worth noting that the commission, maybe over the last 10 years, has also acknowledged the passage of sort of technological change. So theater marquees, for instance, at the Apollo Theater 20 years ago, the commission approved removing the three sides of that marquee where they were sort of analog hung letters, which in its way is its own sort of technology from an earlier time. So the commission approved replacing those with three very large LED panels, and that allowed for the changeover of performance information that was approved at the New Amsterdam Theater, and it's been approved subsequently in many theater marquees. And that's something obviously right at sidewalk level. I think also poster boxes. The commission has approved the replacement of posters, which, again, there's a craft associated with the artwork that would go into posters that were put up and outside of theaters, and those have been approved to be replaced with LED screens. So I think, this is an issue of, I think, degrees. This applicant, as I said, and you all know, maintains the center and the historic material throughout the exteriors and all the interiors, those designated and non-designated. This is a very limited change. And it's, I think, just to point out that this is not historic fabric, it's a historic technology, but what we're talking about here is not original from what we can tell from the photo documentation we collected. It's not actually original to the building. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take any other questions or.
All right, thank you. Any final questions, commissioners? All right, not seeing any, I think we'll move to our discussion, excuse me. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so I want to thank everyone who came and spoke today. I think it was an interesting discussion and interesting to think about the commission's regulatory history with respect to substitute materials. And it is true the commission has allowed and does allow for, even at staff level and sometimes at commission level, depending on the scope, allow for substitute materials, even at the ground floor. And that is also depending on the scope and the type of material and its sort of tactile qualities, and because it's something you can touch. So we have approved it both at buildings in historic districts and in individual landmarks. So that's something to keep in mind. I think that the applicant has shown that these are not historic signs. These are signs that were added post designation. And so when we do look at substitute materials, we also look at their appearance. And so they have a mock-up here, which we can see. They will reuse the stainless steel housing and put the LED tubes within it. So I think there's things to factor that these are not historic signs, that the commission does approve substitute materials based on the amount of it, the sort of scope, as well as the visibility and appearance. And that we have also done it actually on this building in the past. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
I'm impressed by a lot of the testimony. Obviously, there's a lot of passion for these neon signs, and I understand that because this is a very iconic marquee with signage that everybody is familiar with. And I think it has been associated with neon signs. So I do want to acknowledge the testimony of the people that have come out here. I thought it was very compelling. However, my understanding is that we have approved LED signage in other situations in landmark buildings, including this building. So I think it's hard to, say no in this situation. And in terms of visibility, it does look like this, what they're replacing it with, the LED signage, is very similar. So, and the signage, as Sarah had mentioned, it's not historic to the building. So, for those reasons, I do think that the LED signage is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Please go
and
ahead.
then the second thing I think is the wayfaring signage
Yes,
on
thank
the
you.
front. I understand that this is an addition. I do find it compelling that, they want to add the address to this entrance, which seems very reasonable, given that this is a huge tourist attraction. And I think you have people coming from not just all over the country, but all over the world. So I think that this marquee can handle it, given the size of this building and the massive storefronts. I think it's difficult to put the address someplace else because you do have retail stores in the area and you don't want to create other clutter. So it seems to me a reasonable request to put the address on the front of the marquee.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Jefferson.
I know there must be some perceptual issues but I can't see it from these examples. And I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with my other, the other commissioners who've spoken that it really is pretty hard to see it, and it makes sense, although the testimony was definitely worth thinking about.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I agree with the comments, and actually, we are confronted with this situation, and I think that a couple of things. One is that, as Gail Brewer, the former borough commissioner, borough president, like to say, in the rain, especially, it's very hard at nighttime to locate buildings, and it's required by law to have the numbers of building. And in New York City, given that we're missing so many DOT street signs, you don't even know whose street you're on, let alone the numbers on the building. And I think so in terms of the numbers on this most visited, one of the most visited building is needed, especially from across the street when you're trying to figure out, just like number 7 Times Square, 1 Times Square, where is 1 Times Square, and so, I love neon signs, but and we try to do neon signs as well in my own district, which is renowned for neon signs. But the fact in the ground is that the technology has to move on. It's very hard to maintain, and it doesn't do us any service by having something that is missing characters in the line of lettering. And so I do hear the testimony. I hear you loud and clear, but I think given the choices, I think that this is the way to go.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Bland.
I always find it reassuring when in a difficult situation where I find I can't really figure out how to vote, that Angie Masters goes first. I think she illustrated in her response the difficulty of coming to a decision here. The testimony was very reassuring, but so is the fact that And I think it's difficult to let pure nostalgia be the sole ingredient of moving forward. That might be a dangerous statement for historic preservationists to say, but I do think it's true. And I do also find that it's kind of difficult to see the big difference here, and I don't think the general public will see it at all. So it's kind of a difficult vote in a way. I feel in a way kind of unprepared technically to opine on this. I will say that a good friend of mine was Rudy DeHerrick, who used to own Let There Be Neon on one of the downtown streets. He was a great friend, and sorry, Rudy Stern. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, Rudy DeHerrick was a graphic designer. Yes. So anyway, difficult vote, but I'll vote with the commissioners as they have already said.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, this is an interesting and difficult issue. And for one, we're dealing with an individual landmark. And yes, we do try to preserve materials. And we haven't necessarily looked at neon as a material like cast iron, for example. It's I think in part because we allow so much change, so many changes in signage over time. We tend to look at signage a little differently than, I mean, that isn't to say, we don't, let's say if there are pin mounted letters, we may say, okay, it's all right to change these regardless of what was there originally. So we've, let ourselves have some more flexibility in those instances, I think. And, I think neon is great, but I don't know that, it's something that we necessarily should require in every case. I think the issues here are, do they need to make a change? And also, if a change is made, can they do a reasonable approximation of the existing signage? And I actually think that, what they've shown us is going to look to most people fairly close to neon, the way that the LED is being designed in this case, because it's not just a block lettering, which would be a very different look. And on the issue of the 30 Rock Center on the front, I definitely think that it should be done because it's a huge complex and tourists absolutely have trouble finding, locations. So I think that's important. So, I appreciate very much the discussion, but I think I'm inclined to approve this just because there have been so many changes over time. This was not always a neon sign, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
So I think all of the, my fellow commissioners have very eloquently explained, everyone feels the same way. It's sort of very sad to see something so distinctive and really kind of beautiful from a particular period of time in our history in the city and in other places kind of fall by the wayside because of technology. Happens every single day of our lives. It's unfortunate, but it happens. I do think it's a very practical solution that isn't going to detract from the signage. And, this marquee is non-historic. So I think that I can approve it.
Okay.
But I actually am not in favor of putting the address of the building on the sign. It isn't something that is done regularly. What happens more often is that the name of the building is put in lights, whether it's the Apollo Theater or the McGraw-Hill Building or the MetLife Building, but it's not really the address unless the address is the actual name. So I can't support it. I can't not support that. And I don't think it's a good precedent. And I don't think it's a good precedent in this particular complex where the building signage is extremely distinct and consistent throughout. I could accept somewhere else on this building something that's, we approve backlit signage all the time. They have these frames that they could do something with. So I can't approve that.
I mean, I do think, I understand the sort of the visual clutter on the marquee. I think I was persuaded by the applicant when thinking about where else would you put it on the building. And I think you have storefronts and you have very neat taut, limestone columns and granite bases with granite bases. And I think, this was the historic location for signage, and we've seen in historic photographs different variety and types of signage on the marquees. So I think that was persuasive for me. But I appreciate your thought on that. But I do think we have enough to vote for it as is. So Commissioner Master, yes.
Said one more thing about the number. Increasingly, we're relying on our phones to call Ubers or Lyfts or whatever, and you need to know the address. Sometimes you're standing there and say, well, I'm at Rockefeller Center, but what's the address? They need to know the address.
It is true. I got in and gave my cross streets to a cab driver.
Yeah,
Couldn't do anything with it. I needed the exact address.
You have to know addresses all of a sudden.
Okay, Angie, please.
In the matter of LPC 25-04728, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Rockefeller Center, which is an individual and interior landmark. I note that the neon signage at these marquees has changed on multiple occasions over time to reflect the occupancy of the building and changes in marketing. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the addition of the building address at the front of the marquees featuring red illuminated lettering in stainless steel frames will harmonize with the scale, internal illumination, and appearance of the existing lettering and will not overwhelm the marquee. That the installation of LED tube lighting at the marquees will greatly improve the energy efficiency and ease of maintaining the fixtures, with only a slight change to the appearance of the lettering compared to the original neon tubing. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the Rockefeller Center individual landmark complex.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion? Thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Nay.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. That's approved. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 6, LPC 25-00158. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1183, lot 42, 322 West 72nd Street in the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. This is a colonial revival style apartment building with Art Deco style details designed by George and Edward Bloom and built 1924 to 25. The application is to replace windows.
Hey, Commissioners, the applicant has entered the hearing via Zoom. Elliot, I'm going to give you control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen. And then you can advance the slides using the arrow keys or your mouse. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
My name is Elliot Folsom and I'm here from Panorama Windows. I am here to discuss the replacement of 7 windows at 322 West 72nd Street. So this 322 West 72nd Street is a part of the West End Collegiate Historic District extension that was designated in June or on June 25th, 2013. I want to call out, this is an older drawing and this is actually not the building. The building is here. So I just have the wrong reference on the location plan, but everything else is correct. So the building was built between 1924 and 1925 by architects George and Edward Bloom in a colonial revival and Art Deco style. The building features a limestone podium with ornate masonry around the main entrance as well as the top 2 floors of the building. Between the 3rd and 13th floor, there is a simple red brick facade. Now, here, on the left, you'll see the 322 West 72nd Street 1940s tax photo. I actually took the 330 West 72nd Street photo because you can actually zoom in and get a better idea of what was there in the 1940s. So this here is 330 West 72nd Street, which we're not talking about. This is 322 West 72nd Street. And you can see that there's a combination of 8/1 double hungs and 6/1 double hung windows. This is the building currently, and it's essentially the exact same thing as the designation photo that was taken in 2013. So there are 156 window openings above the limestone podium. 125 of these windows are 1/1 double hung. 31 are single light casements or tilt turn windows. And 3 have a bottom fixed transom. And 3 of those are in, 3 are among the 7 that we're proposing to change. And they are this one, and this one. And we'll see them close up on the next slide. So this is just a closer shot. And actually, window number 1, you can't really tell because it's hidden behind the tree. But window number 5 is very visible. You can see it's a smaller double hung window above a fixed bottom transom that was, I believe, installed for a permanent air conditioner fixture. Now, unfortunately, these transoms do not contain insulated glass units because of the way that they were built. They have a piece of 1/4-inch plexiglass, which is not thermally efficient. It doesn't help the shareholders in the winter, and it doesn't help them in the summertime. So to basically sum up the whole presentation, the building's historic windows were 6/1 and 8/1 double hung windows. All the windows on the north facing facade have been replaced with primarily 1/1 double hung windows. The existing windows in this apartment are not water and airtight, and they're not thermally efficient. And by allowing us to replace the windows with 1/1 double hung windows, we actually will help to maintain the existing uniformity throughout the building. And I have included 3 other similar buildings that have a, 150 West 79th Street and 1136 Fifth Avenue have a limestone podium with a brick facade above. And they originally had, combinations of gridded windows. And master plans were approved with 1/1 double hung windows. So at 150 West 79th Street, the original combination were 8/1 and 6/1 double hung windows, and there was a master plan approved for 1/1 double hung windows. 500 West End Avenue was originally a combination of 8/1 and 6/1 double hung windows, and there is now an approved master plan for 1/1 double hung windows. And 1136 Fifth Avenue originally had a combination of 6/1 double hung windows, and the approved master plan is now for 1/1 double hung windows. The remainder of my package just shows the existing elevation up here on top. So you can see in openings 1, 5, and 7. There is an existing fixed bottom transom for an air conditioner unit. The rest of the windows are all 1/1 double hung in line with the majority of the windows on that facade. Our replacement would call for new, more thermally efficient and acoustically efficient 1/1 double hung windows that would match sight lines of the existing. So here is the existing replacement double hung window that was installed somewhere in the late 90s and more likely early 2000s before the building's designation. This is our proposed window. We have actually added in a shaped brick mold on the outside to match what we believe is the historic condition that is underlying underneath the existing panning. This shows you the section detail through the 3 windows that have the fixed bottom transom. And now just the horizontal section details of the existing windows and our proposed windows. And that is it for me.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, questions? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So 2 quick questions. So the new window is going to meet the current energy code?
Correct.
And did you look at doing a 6/1? And if so, why wasn't that considered?
We did look at doing the 6/1 double hung window, but the building did not want to proceed that way.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Please come up to the podium and state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Hey, Murphy Cooperman. I am the occupant of 322 West 72nd Street, 3B. And I'm here in support of the proposal for the 1/1. We would like to replace the 7 front-facing windows in my unit.
Hang on a second, because I think you're the applicant. So I think you should come up here and sit with the staff person and then, right? And then we'll go through testimony and then we'll come to you after all of the testimony. All right. And is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? No. Noting there isn't anyone else in the room, I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any other remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have 1 remote participant with their hand raised, that being Megan Fitzpatrick from Landmark West. Megan Fitzpatrick, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee appreciates the desire for uniformity and energy efficient windows. However, we would like to emphasize that many of our historic buildings today lack distinct character due to the removal of multi-light windows in favor of 1/1 double hung windows. Our committee recognizes this application offers an opportunity for the building to establish a master plan hinged upon exploring ideas to restore the original 6/1 fenestration and restore some historic character. Our committee would like to stress the benefits of a master plan, not only for providing certainty in stewardship, but for how easy it makes the lives of tenant neighbours who will also wish to update and replace their windows. Our committee recommends the building develop a master plan which incorporates multi-lights for the retention of historic character for this building. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Sandy Ashendorf. Okay. Sandy Ashendorf, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, okay, good. Thank you, Commissioners. We appreciate this opportunity to present in front of you. As I really just am here to sort of amplify what I already filed on behalf of the building. I'm president of the co-op board. And as you see from Elliot's testimony and from the various documents that we have put in front of you, um, we are in support of the applicant's position to keep the 1/1 configuration. There are no 6/1 configurations at the moment, or 8/1s, as Elliot said, there might have been in the 1940s. When we replaced the entire set of windows, all of the windows in the building some time ago, we were replacing 1/1. We even though we were not landmarked at the time, so of course we didn't have to present, but we just continued with what we had. So really, if there are any questions that you have for me on behalf of the building per my letter or otherwise, I'm here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 7 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
My name is Marie Murphy. As I mentioned, I am the occupant of 322 West 72nd 3B, and I would like your support for the 1/1 design as we had discussed, both from an energy efficient. And right now we are the outlier in our building with the current configuration, and we would like to be consistent with the rest of the building with the 1/1 design. Thank you for your time, and I hope you support the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Is my understanding correct that you originally proposed a 6/1 and the co-op board said, no, it should be a 1/1?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and I mean, I guess technically the co-op board is the applicant, right? Technically, yeah, they signed the application form. I just did have one other question. What is the finish proposed for the windows?
It's bronze on the exterior.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Bronze, what?
Bronze.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any other final questions? No, okay, so let's close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So the hearing is closed, and this is an application to replace 7 windows at the 3rd floor of this building. The building has had all of its windows, historic windows, replaced, I think, twice in the past, so well before designation and twice before designation. And the applicant is proposing 1/1 to match the majority of the other windows on the facade. And it sounds like the finish is intended to do that as well. And you know the history, we've been through it a lot over the years. The commission has historically found these sort of early 20th century revival styles apartment buildings, to which many of which have had their historic multi-light windows replaced prior to designation. And in the last 30 years, the commission started to approve new master plans for a simplified configuration, usually 1/1, with an improved profile for the panning, and particularly if it was a master plan to achieve uniformity in lieu of getting back the historic configuration. And then over the years, our review of this has sort of evolved a little, and I think we now look at these more on a case-by-case basis and look at how critical the configuration is to the style of the building. So typically, buildings that are corner buildings may be more prominent because they have 2 facades. So those are cases where we maybe have required the multi-light configuration, although the applicant certainly has examples and shown us examples of corner buildings where we've approved the 1/1. Or buildings that are very minimal or have simple detail where really the windows defined the style. We have required that the window configuration match the historic configuration, and where buildings have more ornament and detail and are robust, and the windows maybe played a less critical important part to the style, we've allowed for the 1/1. So it really has been sort of on a case-by-case basis, depending on the building. This is a building between two other apartment buildings, which also have 1/1 double windows. And this is a proposal for just the 7 windows on the facade. So they want to match what's there on the rest of the building. So I'm going to spare you, Vice Chair Bland, on the windows. I know you love the windows so much, and I'll skip you and go to Commissioner Chapin.
Jeez. Yeah, these are a persistent issue that we always look at windows a lot. And particularly like in this, as in this case, we have a building that was totally, replaced windows prior to designation. And so we have 1/1s virtually everywhere. And we have one single apartment, which doesn't fit with the current configuration and therefore, doesn't look well relatively. It would be nice if we were presented with people doing their entire building or at least a floor or something so we could start a trend of some sort, but it's difficult to look at in general. I don't know, in this case, I'm inclined to just say do 1/1 and as the other windows are, even though this building has relatively little decoration. But until such time as there might be a more complete window change or master plan, I feel like this would at least bring some consistency to the lower floors. But
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, these are always kind of challenging. However, I think I can persuade myself that look, 80% of the windows above the podium are 1/1. And I do really think it's important for there to be uniformity. I do really think if the building is very interested in that, it would behoove them to do a master plan and get approval for something that they can just, have a plan for. But I think actually, even though this is not a highly decorated building, in addition, there is some distinctiveness here. The base is different, and then just below the cornice, the window surrounds give it some character. I certainly think it has a little more character than the building to the left, which is pretty much 100% 1/1. The right is kind of a hodgepodge. So I think within the midst of its neighbors, I'm very happy that the goal here ultimately is to have some uniformity, and that, hopefully will inspire the neighbors to move in whatever direction they think makes sense. So I can approve this.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
I base my decision on the existing 1/1 was there prior to designation. So I could go 1/1.
All right, Commissioner Goldblum.
I'm not a fan of this application. I think for me, it's not appropriate. We recently told the person who lives on the other side of the party wall or shared, property line, no on a very similar application. And granted, that building is perhaps a little bit plainer than this one, but not by much. And the problem is that if we approve this, what we will do, even though we wish the co-op to do a master plan, is we will push them to not do a master plan, because they'll know that if they do it in dribs and drabs, they're going to get permission. So if it is acknowledged that the building is more appropriate with the multi-light upper sashes. And if our goal is to, in the end, restore that design feature that was an original design feature, I think we have to live with the inconsistency for a little while until the current round of windows fail and they apply for a master plan or not. But I think if the principle is that these windows were essential to the intent of the architect at the time, then we should stick with them.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I tend to agree with Commissioner Goldblum. And the thing that concerns me is the applicant, it sounds like, wanted to do a 6/1, and the co-op board said, no, you have to do a 1/1. If the co-op board wants a standard of 1/1, they should submit a master plan so we can look at it and discuss it, because otherwise they are in effect making a master plan without having submitted a master plan. So I'd kick it back and say, co-op board, if you want 1/1, please submit a master plan, or the applicant submit a 6/1.
Okay. Commissioner Chen?
I think the commissioner's comments illustrate where we are. It is, the commission has approved a lot of these applications before, given the predominance, the overwhelming majority of the window in practicality is already 1/1. And so we have a history of approving this type of application with or without a master plan. So I would defer to the rest of the commission and hear what they have to say.
Vice Chair Bland?
Yeah, I think when almost every other window in the facade is now 1/1, for me, it's a little hard to say, oh, let's start and change it now. Partly because, as I understand it, this is going to be done in this building piecemeal, one by one by one by one, over a long period of time. And I think the inconsistency that will bring, to me, not worth the change of the 6/1. On the other hand, if this were a rental building or a co-op that said we're going to replace all the windows at one time, then I would be in the camp of 6/1, but not in this case.
Okay, all right. So I think, I think I can also be persuaded to go with the 1/1, given the fact that so many of the windows have been, well, there are no historic windows left, and so many of them are 1/1, and it is only 7 windows on the facade. And we have a long history, sort of evolving history of dealing with it. And I think that in the meantime, the level of ornamentation and its placement between the 2 other apartment buildings kind of supports it. It's not as prominent as a corner building where we would make them sometimes do more of a historic configuration. So I think we have 6 then. Diana, would you make the motion?
So we're doing,
We have a motion, Corey?
no, I've got the motion. So we're doing 1/1 or,
Yes.
okay. I wasn't sure if we had the votes ultimately.
Thank you. I'm the
Okay.
last one.
In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 25-00158, 322 West 72nd Street, West End, Collegiate Historic District Extension. A colonial revival style apartment building with Art Deco style details designed by George and Edward Blum and built in 1924-25. Application is to replace windows. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. Staff, I also note that at the time of designation, all of the 6/1 and 8/1 double hung windows were replaced by 1/1 double hung windows and single pane tilt and turn windows. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed windows match the historic 6/6. Oh, so, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Finding that all of the historic 6/6 and 8/1 double hung windows at the street facade of this building were replaced prior to the designation of the historic district. Therefore, the work will not further diminish a cohesive historic fenestration pattern, that the proposed double hung windows will match the historic windows in terms of operation and details, and the use of painted metal in lieu of wood will be imperceptible from the street on this large apartment building, and that the proposed brown finish will match the finish of the existing windows to remain, thereby supporting a unified fenestration pattern.
All right, Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Nope.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
7 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to read the next two items in together as they are being presented as one proposal. It's a public hearing item number 7, LPC 25-05196, an application for a binding report in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1111, Lot 1, 1000 Fifth Avenue in the Metropolitan Museum of Art Individual and Interior Landmark. This is a Beaux-Arts and Roman style museum building designed by Box and Mold, R.M. Hunt and McKim Mead and White, and built in 1864 to 1965, with later additions built between 1975 and 1990 and designed by Roche Dinkeloo. The application is to install entrance infill and signage, and also public hearing item number 8, LPC 25-04849, application for a binding report for Manhattan Block 1111, Lot 1. Also 1000 Fifth Avenue, the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Individual and Interior Landmark. Beaux-Arts and Roman style museum building designed by Box and Mold, R.M. Hunt and McKim Mead and White, and built in 1864 to 1965, with later additions built between 1975 and 1990, designed by Roche Dinkeloo. And this application is to install rooftop HVAC equipment and screening.
All right, please go ahead.
Hello, commissioners. My name is, hold on, sorry, I'm always the shortest one. My name is Brett Gard. I'm the head of capital planning at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And we are here to present two projects as one project because you can see them together. And I'm joined by my colleagues at Buyer Blinderbell Architects, Henry Miller and Michael Whetstone, who will present. I just wanted to give a quick overview of our agenda and our reasons for doing the project, and then I'll hand it off. So can I, perfect, thank you. So we'll go over some historical information and context. Then we'll talk about the restoration of the 83rd Street entrance doors. And then we'll talk about the replacement of the north side chiller plant. Again, the reason we're doing these two projects together, even though they are separate interior projects, is because you can see them on the exterior at the same time and at the same location. Also because both of these projects help us achieve our goals as an institution in terms of accessibility and sustainability. So they both address these directly. The restoration of the 83rd Street entry will allow us to provide a fully accessible entry off of the plaza level into the museum. And then in the inside of the museum, we'll be creating a new stair and elevator outside of the interior designated space. So that's not part of this application. We're just talking about the doors, but this will finally allow us to have direct accessible access from the plaza through a corridor into the Great Hall, which is something that we don't have right now adjacent to the Great Hall. And the replacement of the north side chiller plant is a project that has been maybe 30, 40 years in the making, which is to replace our main central plant for the museum. It provides 100% of our humidity and 60% of our cooling. And we anticipate a significant reduction in our energy uses as a result of the project. So I'll hand it off to my colleagues, Henry.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, commissioners. So I'm going to give some quick history of the museum and its.
Can you just state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Henry Miller, principal at Buyer Blinderbell Architects. So a aerial photograph of the Met. It's, a building we all hopefully know well, composed of 21 wings. And about 2.1 million gross square feet of space from 80th Street to 84th Street. And this is a quick overview of the landmark history of the museum. It was originally designated a landmark in 1967. You can see that in blue. And the successive addition of the wings really over the years from 1970 to 1990 by Roche-Dinkeloo are shown in green. There is an interior landmark, as Brett mentioned, which is the Great Hall and the Grand Stair. We are not influencing the interior landmark for this project. So then, as Brett mentioned, on the 83rd Street access, really the view corridor looking west at the museum, you can see these two projects are related visually. There's the 83rd Street entrance, which is there at the east facade of Wing E. And then further back at Wing W and Wing X is the North Side Chiller Plant. We'll see the cooling towers related to that. So zeroing in first on the 83rd Street entrance and reinforcing what Brett mentioned, being able to provide a third public entrance on the plaza is a key goal for the museum. You can see here the existing state on top, which is really the two entrances, one at 81st Street, one at 82nd Street. The 81st Street entrance is from the plaza, but it doesn't deliver you directly at the Great Hall, which is really the nerve center for ticketing and for visitor services. So the new 83rd Street entrance you can see on the photo below will not only be accessible, but bring you up to the Great Hall directly. It also provides additional entry and exit points, which will allow the museum to do a better job of managing queues. So they won't have as many long queues at the two entrances, and they can manage that more easily this way. So this is really a restoration of the original three doors that were present at the time that the wing was opened. This is a McKim White wing designed as part of the Fifth Avenue facade in 1906. You can see here with the three red arrows, those three original doors that originally existed. And looking at the facade of that Fifth Avenue elevation, just zooming in there, you can see the three doors again, as they originally were. And just a quick note, the kind of mirror image here, which is Wing J on the south side, actually didn't originally have doors. There is now one door there, but that was not a symmetrical condition. Part of that is, I think, the natural grade of Fifth Avenue. You actually at grade at 83rd Street, whereas at 81st Street, it's a ramped condition. So this is the more natural place to have had a door, from the plaza. Historical photos showing that entrance in use with the public lined up outside. Also, this proposal was approved by Landmarks in 2001 to restore the entrances. This was by Roche-Dinkeloo Architects. It was not executed. So looking a little bit at the historic fabric that's there now, this is on that 83rd Street corridor looking west at the 83rd Street doors. There is one door there, which is a controlled entrance. It's occasionally open to the public for special events, but typically is closed, and it's not a point for visitors to the Met to enter. Zooming into that, you can see actually the evidence of the infilled limestone there. It's a slightly different color, as well as the granite at the base. You can see some of the evidence of where that was infilled previously. Just looking at some of the context. So this is the 81st Street door. So this is the single door that exists along the 81st Street axis. We looked at that. We also looked at the 82nd Street doors, which is really the main entrance. This is a prominent public entrance, obviously. Zooming in a little bit, we looked at the design and the materiality of these doors as a starting point for the proposal. They are bronze with glass infilled lights, which we drew from for the design of the new entrance. So looking at the existing and proposed elevation, you can see here the existing on top and the proposed on the bottom. It might be a little bit hard to see, but we've actually dashed in the screen wall which is the proposal that my colleague Michael Whetstone will speak to for the cooling towers, but this does reinforce how these two projects are related elevationally there. So zooming in to the wing, you can see the existing and the proposed doors. Because it's a restoration, you know, the logic of the openings, they're relative to the cornice, to the rhythm of the openings above, the arched openings, and the windows that are flanking it, is all very much in keeping with the facade. This is the demolition plan. So, you know, because these openings are there and we did some probes from the backside, the lintels are still in place. So really it's carefully removing that existing limestone and the granite base, and trying to keep as much of the existing fabric intact. And then the proposal would be to restore the limestone to its Indiana limestone, its Deer Isle granite. So we'll make sure to get a good match on those. And then infill the existing openings with a bronze door and transom. We have clear glass lights in the doors, which is important from a security and visual access standpoint. And we're holding the doors back so that they're in line with the existing windows that are adjacent. And going into a little bit more detail, you can see here the insulated bronze transom, the bronze door frame. We're right at grade, so we'll replace the existing threshold. We'll be able to leave the existing threshold in place for the middle door and create new stone thresholds at the adjacent doors. There's some details. Because we are inserting this into a stone surround, that cornice above is actually solid stone. We are introducing a band of bronze both at the head and at the jambs to help install a light fixture at the head, and then at the jamb, the ADA required buttons. So that's actually a nice opportunity to conceal some of those devices. You can see it here axonometrically. And this is just to reinforce that point about referencing the 82nd Street entrance doors, some of the simplified profiles and the glass lights in the doors. And some renderings. So this is from the exterior. Important to note that the glass here is shown as frosted. That will be clear. But this is the elevation from the exterior. We are keeping that existing sign pylon you see there between the right two doors. Here you can see a little bit of that jamb treatment where we're framing the entrance with the bronze. And the signage band. So this will be a bronze transom. The letters will be a light bronze. They'll be illuminated from the light above. And this will really signify that this is an entrance to the museum. We haven't finalized the wording, but we've established both the materiality and the size of those letters to be in keeping with really the museum as a whole and their signage standards. All right, so that's the end of the 83rd Street doors. I'll hand it off to Michael Whetstone.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Michael Whetstone, Principal at Barwood & Bell. I'll be doing the second half of this presentation, talking about the North Side Chiller Replacement Plant. That project is, excuse me, that project is located in the wings that you see there, built in the 50s and 60s, Wing W and Wing X, which are mostly back of house spaces, as well as housing the 1950s Race Rennie Rogers Auditorium. Looking at it in section, at the top is a section from end to end of the museum. You can see where the chiller plant is at the bottom and the cooling towers on the top. There's a blow up of that section. So this is a project that's really driven by the need to replace aging mechanical equipment, but it's also driven by sustainability and resiliency. So the cooling towers, the chiller plant as it is right now is located in the lowest basement that you see in yellow. That is an area that never flooded before, but in the last few years with a global warming and unprecedented climate incidents like Hurricane Ida, the drainage in Central Park is not enough to prevent some water from getting into the basements of the Met and flooding critical equipment. So with the idea of replacing the chiller plant, the idea was to lift it up 1 story so it's out of the flood water. So you can see the chiller plant goes up 1 floor. Moving that to the ground floor will displace a series of important exhibition preparation workshops. Those will be moved to the 3rd floor, and to make space for them on the 3rd floor, we are proposing the infill of 2 small light wells, about 4,000 square feet of new construction, not visible from the street, but that allows for a contiguous floor space on the 3rd floor for those workshops. And then at the top, you can see we're going to be replacing the cooling towers on the roof of the auditorium. So those are the project components. This is the central chiller plant. It actually cools 60% of the building, which is 1.25 million square feet. So it creates chilled water, and it's pumped to all the wings that you see here shaded in blue for the HVAC systems. And everything is in support of the Met's need for a constant 70-degree, 50% year-round temperature and humidity for art conservation. This chiller plant with the new equipment, our mechanical engineers modeled this. Over the actual performance of the current plant, the new plant will actually use 54% less electricity because of the energy saving and newer equipment. Just looking at it where it is on the roof. In this aerial view, you can see on the left side is a series of cooling towers. On the south side, those were built in 2012, and you can see there was a metal screen wall, which was approved by the commission in 2010 on the left side. And on the right side are the older 30 and 40-year-old cooling towers that we'll be replacing. So in our new configuration, we're going to put them all on the roof of the auditorium, and we are proposing a screen wall similar to the one on the left side. The screen wall on the right side is actually a few feet lower, but the idea is to make those 2 sides somewhat similar. Here's an axonometric. The existing cooling towers in red, they actually exist on 2 levels, which is a no-no for engineering because the water pressure is different by the time you get to the chiller plant and the ground floor. So we are proposing to have all the new cooling towers on the roof of the auditorium with the screen wall. You can see the screen wall is actually set back about 108 feet from the facade. So it is not at all visible from the Plaza or from 5th Avenue, but you can see it has a partial alignment with 83rd Street. So there is some partial visibility of the top of the screen wall from down 83rd Street. And that's really the issue that I think we're bringing to you today. There's some existing conditions. This is the existing cooling towers on the roof of the auditorium. And you can see on the right, the McKimmead and White pedimented roof, which is unique to this side of the building. And then you can see that on the right, the pediment that you see rising over the 83rd Street entrance. So this is just our roof plan. You can see that our cooling towers and screen wall are on axis with the McKimmead and White pedimented roof. And in orange, you can see the areas where we're infilling in for the light wells. Again, those 2 components are not visible from the street. There's a close-up view and a photograph of the 2 light wells, all of which are in later construction areas. There are sections showing the cooling towers on top of the auditorium. I'll show you in detail. So everything about the height of these cooling towers is based on engineering criteria. There's the roof of the auditorium. There's the minimum distance to the piping hanging above it. The piping all needs to be below the cooling towers. There is a girder, plate girders, 4 of them. They span across the auditorium from end to end, supporting the cooling towers, made thinner at the ends to reduce height. And then the cooling towers themselves, which have their clearance for vibration isolation and the sound attenuators on top. So we worked very, very carefully on this with structural and mechanical engineering criteria to arrive at this minimum height that we could come up with. Here's a close-up axonometric of the cooling towers and the screen wall. You can see that the screen wall is mounted on the steel framing for the dunnage, so it does not actually touch the McKimmead and White masonry at all. It floats about 1 foot above. And then, as I said before, the screen wall that we're proposing matches the existing screen wall on the south side, which was built in 2012. It is a simple painted aluminum louver, and we're proposing and matching the materials. On the left, you can see close-up views of this existing screen wall that's on the south side. Here's some more details of the screen wall and the construction behind the McKimmead and White gabled roof. Now, as I said before, the screen walls on both sides and the cooling towers are not visible at all from the street or from Fifth Avenue, but there is just kind of an incidental alignment with 81st Street and 83rd Street. So for those two view corridors, as you go down the street, there is some visibility of the top of both screen walls. So I'm going to start with the 81st Street side in the south. You can see the sight lines at the top. The person standing across Fifth Avenue cannot see the screen walls, but as that person moves down 81st Street, at a certain point, the top comes into view. Here's just a photo. So this is down 81st Street a bit. You can see at the very top, this is an enlargement of the photo because you are several hundred feet away at this point. You can see at the very top, here I've highlighted in red, you can see the top of the screen wall above the roof. In this case, this is the existing condition on the south side. And as you move farther down, it rises even higher. So there's a similar amount of visibility for what we're proposing at 83rd Street. On the north side, here's that same corresponding sightline section. From across Fifth Avenue, you can't see it at all, but you can start seeing it as you start going down 83rd Street. I'll show you a series of views moving down 83rd Street to show you how that works. So on the left is a map, and there's several views, each identified with a number. I just want to point out one thing here, which is that 83rd Street does not line up axially with that pediment. It's actually sort of an incidental, accidental shift off of it. So your view is not an axial view of the pediment. It's really kind of a partial view which narrows as you go back. So from across Fifth Avenue, there's no visibility at all. This is the point at which the screen wall just becomes visible. It's actually in the rendering at the bottom. That's hard to see because it's distant and there's trees. So I've outlined in red what you would be able to see if you look very carefully. Moving to the next viewpoint, you can start seeing the screen wall rising up just a little bit more. Just to the right of the pediment. And there I've outlined it in red so you can see it a little bit better. Then moving even farther down, the bottom, you can see a little bit of the screen wall rising. At this point, you're beginning to lose your view of the pediment. There in red is the visibility. And then moving all the way back, excuse me, almost down to Madison Avenue. It's the same thing, but again, at this point, I think you're getting so far away that it's very hard to perceive at all what you're seeing. This is the view from Madison Avenue, even farther away, and the view keeps narrowing. And then this is a view from Park Avenue. The view from Park Avenue, you really can't see anything at all. So that's our visibility. We did construct a mock-up at landmark staff, LPC staff direction. We built a scaffold showing the exact height of this thing on the roof of the auditorium. And we took pictures of it. This was during the summer. You can see the photographs. The red line, it indicates where that is. I think it goes without saying that these photographs that I showed you were taken in the winter when it's quite visible. In the summer, it's hard to see anything on the roof because there's so many trees and leaves. And here is just a comparison, blown up of the two photos, which just proves out the height of the mock-up in the render. Looking at it from the north, going all the way to the reservoir, there's really no visibility of these cooling towers that's significant. They don't rise higher than the skyline of the building, and they really do become lost in the distance in the trees. Now, just a couple of quick things about why the cooling towers are located where they are. These are structural and mechanical considerations. First is structural. Why did we move the cooling towers as far east as we could and not move them farther west away from Fifth Avenue? The reason is structural. You can see on the left is the original McKinney and White Auditorium built in 1907 and had an apsoidal heavy bearing wall. The photograph of the plan on the bottom in the middle shows the 1950s auditorium that was expanded outward. So the diagram on the right shows where the existing bearing walls are, where it was removed, and where the auditorium was extended in blue with steel framing, steel columns and steel beams. Those are not capable of supporting these cooling towers, but the original 1907 bearing walls can support the cooling towers. So that's why we have those plate girders here. So the reason for moving these as far east as possible is entirely structural. And then the other question is, why are these cooling towers taller than the existing ones? The old cooling towers were a kind called forced draft. They were kind of horizontal and they were much lower. And they used twice as much electricity as the taller kind. And in fact, our engineers tell us that the New York City Energy Code doesn't allow you to use those low ones anymore. You have to use a cooling tower that's at least as efficient as the tall ones. So these use half the electricity as the existing. It's part of the energy savings of the project. So the reason they are taller is really for our code and best energy practice reason. So information on the cooling tower. I'll leave you just one little bit, which is that this area of the Met has always been where the main infrastructure is. You can see in the upper left, the photograph from 1907. There's the 3 doors that Henry talked about. But you can see there's a smokestack poking above the roof. That is the original McKim and White coal-fired boiler house, which existed on that site. If you look in the aerial view, you can see there's quite a tall smokestack. That was there until the 1950s, when it was torn down to make way for the current buildings. And those buildings have always had cooling towers on top. This is the first generation. You can see on the left, cooling towers from the 1960s and 70s, just next to the McKim and White gabled roof. And then in the 1980s, there were actually 2 enormous, much taller cooling towers on the roof of the auditorium that had a screen wall. These are much, much taller than what we are proposing. And so this is the last slide, but I just wanted to emphasize that some degree of visibility of the enormous infrastructure needed to run this building has often been visible partially and from farther away. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions on this one? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
So because of that, on page 58, where you maybe it's 51, and maybe it's 59, 60, where you have those little arrows showing visibility views. Is that correct? V1, V2, V3,
Yes.
V4. So just to plug into those Vs. So you're saying you don't see visibility until 3 and then it diminishes?
No. So V1, you cannot see anything. That's where the fifth.
V1, you see nothing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
And
V2 is where it just begins to break.
it
above
just
the roof.
begins.
And then as you go from V2 farther back, the screen wall rises higher, you can see more of it, but you're also getting farther and farther away from it, and the view corridor is narrowing because of with the screen.
Right. So the view corridor is narrowing. It starts to narrow at 4. Where does it narrow?
I think it narrows continuously because the farther back you go.
And by the time you get to,
the left of the building, you can see.
right, okay, I got it, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let's see if there's public testimony. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? John Graham?
I hear the building has 23 wings. That sounds like an angel in Revelations. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. The Victorian Society urges approval of the proposed work. Returning the triple entrance configuration to this McKim and White wing will restore its welcoming and carefully balanced original design. We suggest that this would be a good opportunity to begin to return some of the ornamental classical detail to the museum's entrance doors and transoms. Such a proposal was originally made for this wing in 1981 by Kevin Roche, John Dinkeloo, as seen on board 14. This could be done while still maintaining large areas of glass. Original doors were often very ornamental, highlighting details of the building's architectural style. Doors are a natural focal point for users entering and exiting the building. They're where people come into the closest visual and physical contact with the building. We think it's unfortunate that so many doors on traditional buildings have been replaced with simple and undistinguished designs, interchangeable from one building to another. Regarding the rooftop chiller equipment, we think the large scale of the building and the distances from which the equipment comes into view will render the change insignificant. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, I see that there isn't anyone else in the room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of remote participants with their hands raised. The first we'll be hearing from is Megan Fitzpatrick from Landmark West. Megan Fitzpatrick, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee can support the installation of additional accessible doors at the 83rd Street entrance. Although these entrances are not proposed to use wood, the original McKim-Mead white material, these proposed doors are sensible and offer uniformity while accommodating more visitors to the museum. Updating the museum's energy infrastructure is key for the efficient operation of the museum, the stewardship of its collection, and the comfort of its patrons. We appreciate the museum's proactive focus on becoming more climate resilient. Our committee believes the visibility of the screen in front of the proposed cooling towers does not impact the architectural significance of the museum. We can support the approval of this project. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Zainab Turan from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Turan, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Zainab Turan, speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Chair Carroll and commissioners, we can support both components of this application. We're happy to see a fully accessible entrance from the plaza level with a direct connection to the Great Hall. This addition is an improvement for enhancing accessibility for people with disabilities and reducing congestion at the existing entrances on 81st and 82nd Streets. The proposed bronze and glass doors on each side of the existing entrance on 83rd Street are an appropriate solution as they will restore the 1906 McKim-Mead and White design scheme and will not require the removal of any historic materials. In terms of the chiller plant, we also find that application appropriate. It is necessary to improve the building's energy efficiency by reducing overall energy consumption and meeting the New York City Energy Conservation Code. The proposed screen wall is appropriate as it maintains the visual continuity and symmetry of the existing Fifth Avenue facade and will not detract from the character of the museum, nor will it be visible from the plaza and only minimally visible across Fifth Avenue as one progresses towards Madison Avenue. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is very happy to support this sensitive proposal, and we are thrilled that the Met will have an accessible entrance at 83rd Street. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that we received a letter recommending approval from Manhattan Community Board 7 and 8. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So the testimony was largely supportive. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say before we move to our discussion. Okay. All right. So why don't we do that? Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed. We have two applications before us. One is for the reopening of the masonry openings at the ground floor and new entrance doors installed that will be bronze and glass and match the main entry doors. And there will be small pin mounted letters above them. And then the second application is for the rooftop HVAC equipment with a screen, which has a view corridor down 83rd Street, which becomes more narrow as you move back and is similar to the view corridor of the mechanical equipment and screen that is seen from 80 on the south side that is seen from 81st Street. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to take these?
Thanks again for a really excellent and thorough presentation and for really a terrific job. Both of these are very important projects. One is going to restore original entryways to the building, and it's going to increase accessibility and flow within the building, I think, which is fantastic for people, especially those who wait out on the line in the cold and the rain to get in to see this wonderful collection inside. And I agree with the comments that we've heard, that, the design is simple, and uniform. It matches the main entrance. The letters are slight and pin mounted. I think it works very well. It's just going to blend in. And in terms of the HVAC system with it, the chiller plant, I think it's, a very worthy project. It's going to reduce energy consumption, which is very, very important. And really cool a large percentage of the building, which is also important. I think the visibility aspect is minimal in a way. I mean, as you walk down the block, you'll barely notice. And if you notice, you'll notice for a minute and then you will forget about it. And as soon as you get close to the building, there's no visibility. And I appreciate your sharing the structural issues in terms of placement. So thanks very much. It's a great project. I can support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
A complete and thorough presentation of a complex building. Really well done. I think the entrance infill, completing, restoring the McKinley and White building makes total sense. Beautifully done. The doors are fine. If they're more ornate, they'll be fine too. And the signage sign, perfect. It works beautifully. The rooftop HVAC unit, really a difficult problem, really well resolved. I think it's excellent.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
No disagreement. I think that John's idea of the doors being more detailed is a good one, but I wouldn't withhold my approval for what seems to be a normal and highly logical proposal. I do think it's true, though, that the doors are kind of unfortunately bland and restrained given the robustness of the building. I think the AC is fine. I think that I would suggest, though, that they work with staff on placement of that stanchion. If it's gonna, it seems like such a symmetrical place. It is asymmetrical to the facade. They might move it a little.
Okay. Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. This is a really good presentation. It's wonderful to see handicapped access where you're actually restoring doors that were there and at the right elevation, getting you in right near the Great Hall, so easy access. And cutting your energy consumption by 50% is a no-brainer. I would also add, I appreciate the resiliency aspect, but it's interesting how tightly things are packed in 2 million square feet that you need 4,000 more square feet somewhere to move stuff. But it's a great project.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's a very good thing to move forward on the improvement of the entrances, and the HVAC is not really a problem.
Okay. All right. So I think we have a consensus to support it. We could ask them to explore the location of the extension with the staff. Sorry? Oh, it's not before us today. Okay, so that piece of it is already approved. Okay, so approval as is, and there's two motions. Sorry.
Right, it's okay.
Okay.
In the matter of docket 25-05196, 1000 Fifth Avenue, Metropolitan Museum of Art, individual and interior landmark, individual and interior landmark. A Beaux-Arts and Roman style museum building designed by Box of Mold, R.M. Hunt and McKim, Mead and White, and built in 1864 and 1965, with later additions built between 1975 to 1990, and designed by Roche Dinkeloo. The application is to install entrance infill and signage. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will restore the historic masonry openings and will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the work will improve barrier-free access and circulation for the museum as a whole, that the proposed doors, featuring a simple modern design and dark bronze neutral finish, will closely match the other modern infill found at the main Fifth Avenue entrance and at other secondary ground floor entrance at Wing J, helping to maintain a unified appearance at the building's primary facade. That the proposed signage consisting of pin-mounted letters in a light bronze finish above the doors will be simple in design and small in scale relative to this monumental facade and will not call undue attention to itself, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the individual landmark.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion? All right, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum. Aye. Mr. Ginsburg,
Aye.
6 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Trick us.
I'm sorry, Gene.
L.
Yeah.
Comes after G.
What? There's too many people missing, so it's just easier.
He's just going around.
He was trying to trick us with it.
Come on, wake up.
He was trying to trick us, man.
Look, I was having a stroke. Yeah. All right.
Okay, in the matter of docket 25-04849, 105th Avenue, Metropolitan Museum of Art, individual and interior landmark, a Beaux-Art and Roman style museum building designed by Box and Mold, R.M. Hunt and McKim Mead and White, and built in 1864 to 1965, with later additions built between 1975 to 1990 and designed by Roche Dinkaloo. The application is to install rooftop HVAC equipment and screening. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the mechanical screen will only be visible from a public thoroughfare at a distance from select locations on East 83rd Street, and will be further seasonally screened from view by foliage, that the mechanical screen will have a simple silhouette and neutral finish and will have a discrete presence, that the minimally visible HVAC equipment and related screen will be in keeping with utilitarian rooftop accretions installed at roofscapes throughout the museum, that the new HVAC equipment is required to maintain the interior temperature and humidity levels, which is a key requirement for a museum, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the individual landmark.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
6 in favor, unopposed, the motion passed.
All right, that's approved. Thank you very much. And we'll move to the next two items.
We read the next two items in together as they are being presented as part of the same proposal. Public hearing item number 9, LPC 25-04842, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1917, lot 22, 221 Waverly Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is a vacant lot and the application is to construct a new building. And public hearing item number 10, LPC 25-04843, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1917, lot 21, 223 Waverly Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. Also, this is a vacant lot and the application is to construct a new building.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Stephen Conti, principal at Studio SC Architecture.
My name is Carolina, principal of Studio SC also. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present. Thanks.
All right, so what we have here is, sorry. So we're presenting two projects as one. They are side-by-side sister townhouses. Oh, side-by-side sister townhomes in the in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is from the landmark designation report, and we have our lots, which states from the designation report 221 was a wooden two-car garage of no architectural interest. 223 was a two-car garage that had been covered in tin and also deemed of no architectural interest. So we're dealing with two vacant lots kind of surrounded by an empty backyard and then another one-story garage. So they're kind of floating. Here you see off to the left, we dashed in red where this site lands on the block collage. This is the existing site, how it looks from the street front currently. And that garage on the right, that is our neighbor. That is not the current site. This is our proposed 4-story where we have a few more images, but this is just the site plan and an axonometric showing we're within the bulk of zoning requirements. And block plan, we are kind of off to the bottom right on the plan with the two property lines in bold in black. And you can see there just to the left, we'll show 229, which was recently approved as well. We're kind of matching the height and depth of the project. So here the property lines are in bold. So that's not the building outline, that's the property line outline. And then the building outline sets back. We have a terrace in the rear yard. And here you can kind of see our two townhomes outlined side by side. To the left on this image, we have the backyard from the corner row home from Willoughby. And to the right, we have these one-story garage. And then the first building, taller building off to the right is 229, which was a newer approved project. Looking from the other direction. These are some existing elements of the site. We drew from these. We didn't want to copy because these are new buildings and on a vacant lot. So we tried to keep our design contextually sensitive using more heritage materials, which we have here. We brought some samples of the materials, which we can show after, and choosing to create a row home typology. Here are the elevations with some of the materials marked out. This is from the rear facade, which is not visible from the street, but we're still using the same brick. Side elevations. And a view of the tapered sloped front facade and the bulkhead height from the street. Our projects are in bold. You can see the existing row home from Waverly, which is slightly taller than ours, and 229, which is directly abutting an existing carriage house. Their building is slightly higher as well, but not by much. Here we have some schematic 3D within the block context. This is looking towards Waverly. Further down the block, looking towards Waverly. And looking down Waverly from the opposite corner. And then some more isolated 3D views showing originally we had a different base design that was a bit more modern. We worked with Landmarks team and took some feedback from the community board that they were not happy about that base. So we created more of a standard row home typology at the base. And we also shortened the windows. The windows were a bit taller, a little more modern. So we shortened the heights of all the windows as some of the response. Here we have details, and we will show some of those materials after of the front facade. This is a page of the Fort Greene and Clinton Hill, some approved landmark projects that are a bit more on the modern side. And then our plans. And these are some supplemental images of the materials, which I can go through quickly. This is a clay shingle for the front facade. It's a handmade, and then brick as well. They're both from the same plant in Italy. They're both handmade materials because we wanted to bring some sort of heritage feel to the building and not use a generic brick. And I can bring those materials out. Do I just place them on the table?
Yep, just right on the table's fine.
Because the brick is a handmade brick. And this is the kind of overlapping.
Thank you. We have some questions. Commissioner
Can you go
Goldblum?
back to your street facade colored?
The one in context of the.
I
other
guess
building?
so. Yeah, right there is fine.
Oh, okay.
It looks like the base has a slightly different tint to it than the rest. Is that intentional?
No, that's just the schematic nature.
Okay,
of
so the
render.
idea is that everything that one sees from the front is the terracotta shingle.
Correct, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson, followed by Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I just.
This is Commissioner Ginsburg, just.
Thank you. On sheets, what is it, 16 and I guess 17, it shows the change in materials, which I presume is from what I'll call the shingles to the brick. But then when I look at the renderings of that, it's impossible to see that. Is that just because it's so subtle or?
Well, it was tricky because we were trying to make the views accurate to the photos. So the front of the street's in shadow, in sunlight, and the side is in shadow. But you can see here, that's the brick. I don't know if I can find a view that zooms in potentially on that.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
My understanding.
No problem.
And Commissioner Jefferson.
Two questions. The sides are brick, right? The front is terracotta.
The front and wraps the side, yeah.
Okay. And second, a curious question to me was the page 30. If you go to page 30.
Apologies, I can't see the page numbers here on the screen. So.
Yeah, 3 more.
That one.
There we
that
go.
one.
This one?
You have this courtyard.
Next one, okay.
And looking at this last night, they said he has 2 little windows in the hall. And instead of, you have a beautiful courtyard and you have 2 little windows. And
Yes.
I was wondering, why is that? Is that open or is that open or is it closed? Am I reading this wrong? Is that a courtyard?
That is an inner courtyard between the 2 townhomes. They're combined, they're called narrow outer courts. So by zoning, you're permitted a 20-foot by 10-foot narrow inner court, not to be used for legal light and air,
Or
just
not to be used?
not to be used. And we are not taking legal light and air off of this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do have some windows, maybe they're not shown well in the plan.
Yeah, we do have some small windows.
Yeah. Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move to public testimony and we'll come back to you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? John Graham?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society, New York. When we first began our review of this project for 2 new buildings, it seemed the applicants had done their homework. They've looked at buildings in the district. They provided excellent photographs of carefully detailed modern buildings, which have been approved by the Commission. They've given us clear pictures of historic carriage houses, including the pair of beautifully detailed Beaux-Arts buildings at 237 239 Waverly, which were declared splendid in the designation report. Studying those two buildings and the way the architects Escher and Evans balanced plain brick with limestone carvings, punched openings with recessed doors, and wide copper bands of flashing with smooth slate, could be a lesson in the ways to create a small building which has infinite panache for those who really pay attention. Unfortunately, these architects seem to have decided not to pay attention to all the information they gathered. The silhouette of this very visible pair of buildings suggests a carriage house, but one on steroids. It's at least a story too tall. The buildings would be set so low into the ground that the first floor has a stumpy appearance, seemingly sinking into the sidewalk. They would be tightly wrapped in a material which has more novelty value than historic resonance. There are too many underdeveloped elements here for us to give individual suggestions. This project needs to be completely rethought. It doesn't work as a pair of good contemporary or traditional design or as a background building. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. And is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one hand raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is Rosaria Sinisi. Rosaria Sinisi, I have promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
My name is Rosaria Sinisi, representing Citizens for Responsible Neighborhood Planning of Clinton Hill and Fort Greene. We have also submitted written testimony. We recommend that applicant revisit its proposal after further evaluation of the site's historic context and develop an alternate design considering the smaller scale, differing materials, and lower street-facing massing of the buildings surrounding it. In particular, the incongruously tall windows and height of the front facade would provide a jarring contrast on a block that showcases the smaller structures of carriage houses and service buildings along its eastern and western sidewalks, along with the grand scale of the mansions that back up to Waverly on the western side. This uniquely preserved block provides a glimpse of the social stratification of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as well as the architectural history expressed therein. Other blocks of Waverly that also preserve carriage houses have less architectural integrity, as they now face 20th century high-rises or a park. But Waverly, between DeKalb and Willoughby, remains a survivor displaying its original context, which is important to preserve for future generations. The degradation of this historic context would be a loss indeed. We do not argue that new construction should necessarily replicate that of the past. However, on a rare streetscape of this historic delicacy, the elements of spatial relationship, material, relative massing of stories, and scale in relation to the neighborhood buildings, as well as the public thoroughfare, acquire heightened importance, and their interrelationship is more complex than that of a block of uniform brownstones. Thus, we recommend that the Landmarks Preservation Commission direct the applicant to modify its design in order to respect the history and nature of Waverly Avenue between DeKalb and Willoughby. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is pleased to see new housing proposed for the Clinton Hill Historic District. We were supportive of the modern yet contextual recent infill proposed at 229 Waverly, and we look forward to more new residential infill here. We do not question new housing here, but we do question the appropriateness of this particular design. We note that the applicants have chosen a row house typology for this carriage house block, which results in proposed buildings that are larger than anything that currently exists on this block. We were very intrigued to see the applicant's use of Pedersen brick and terracotta coupled with precedent images of modern construction throughout Europe, but we feel that the proposal does not make the case that these materials are contextually appropriate for this block. We were also surprised to see lot line windows proposed for this mid-block site, especially given that further residential infill may be expected here. Further, we find the proposed stair bulkheads too highly visible. Finally, we feel that placing greater emphasis on the building's entries and cornice lines would elevate the proposed design. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Chris Whitehead. Chris Whitehead, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello,
Can you hear
I'm
me?
Chris. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Chris Whitehead. I'm the owner at 237 Waverly, one of the original carriage houses on Waverly Avenue. I'm deeply concerned by the incongruity between the proposed new construction and the established aesthetic that we've collectively worked to maintain on our block. Our block has rich historical text, and as such, even the smallest exterior changes to our homes undergo strict scrutiny for color and design and texture. Therefore, it's alarming to see plans for a building that appear entirely out of scale and style. While I understand the desire for new developments, it's essential that they harmonize with the existing architectural fabric. The proposed building at 4 stories high with no setback for the 4th floor completely disregards the established scale and proportions of the block. None of the buildings on our block rise to 4 stories. The proposed buildings are overwhelmingly bulky and lacking in character consistent with our block's history. I have a couple more issues. The windows, much could be done to enhance the visual appearance of the main facade, which currently is void of any ornamentation and therefore feels flat without any shadow play on it. The size, shape, and arrangement should reflect the historic character of surrounding buildings. New construction should mimic these proportions so the windows don't look out of place or overly modern. The material and detailing seem entirely out of place. The contemporary styling is featureless, no sills, no lintels, no expression of masonry bearing structure, no change in window heights to reflect floor levels, no expression of operable panes, and the use of terms such as mansards is rather a token gesture than a true effort to respect the context. All in all, the windows look aberrant. Additionally, I'm puzzled by the absence of a garage in the design. We're a carriage house street. Including a garage would not only offer practical benefits for the homeowners, but also help visually align this new building. I hope you saw some of the images that we sent in. A garage could help incorporate the carriage house look like ours at 237 Waverly. The new owners will likely own a car and a vehicle of some kind. Where will they put them? And where do they put the garbage bins and anything like that? Finally, the proposed courtyard raises great concerns. 3 stories without a courtyard would make much more sense. Also, the choice of material, this SK1N terracotta, seems incongruous with our landmark block. More conventional materials like brick, real brick, and stone would be much more appropriate. In conclusion, while I'm not opposed to new designs, any development should enhance rather than overpower the architectural integrity of our block. And I urge you not to approve the current design and give the developer more time to rework the proposal and ensure that whatever is built is respectful of the historic nature of our street. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends conditional denial with the following comments. The applicants should collaborate with their neighbors to refine the design within the specific historical context of Waverly Avenue, which includes rethinking the offset entry door to be more in line with the carriage house nature of the building, reconfigure the bulk of the building, including potentially setting back the 4th floor, reconsidering the attempted mansard homage, and reducing the parapet height. We also received letters from the Society for Clinton Hill, Preserve Our Brooklyn Neighborhood, Fort Greene Association, and 10 other individuals. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Right, thank you very much. So would you like to respond to the comments we've heard?
Yes, there are a few things with regards to the garage comment. New York City, these are 2 separate lots of 20-foot wide. So New York City does not permit a curb cut or a driveway on a 20-foot wide lot in this zoning district. So that would not even be an option. Additionally, with terms of height, we are aligning with the two immediate neighbors in terms of height. We're actually slightly lower than the first building off to our right and the first building, which I understand is the sidewall of coming from Willoughby, but we are slightly under both of our immediate adjacent neighbors to the right and left in terms of height. We are proposing a row home typology. We feel that creating a carriage house replica on two vacant lots surrounded by vacant lots would be more of a disservice architecturally and not really fit into the context. So we chose to kind of wrap the building, which is coming from Willoughby, and create that corner to anchor that corner, since we are the last lot on Waverly, which does face onto Willoughby, which is a row home typology. So.
Okay. Any final questions, commissioners? Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
I missed the first part of the presentation. Are the buildings on the lot line, the front lot line, right on the lot line, or are they set back? I just didn't see
They
the site
are,
plan.
I believe, aligned with the rest of the neighbors. I believe they're on the lot line, yes. Yes. Yeah.
On the lot, and then the neighbors on either side are also on the lot line.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, the carriage houses, because of the nature of the carriage house, have openings, so they tend to be on the lot line. Are there any other row houses on this block which might have setbacks and areaways?
It's mostly carriage houses down Waverly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then this is the view of the row homes from Willoughby, and then ours is the first kind of floating, I call them floating lots because there's nothing around them.
All right. Any final questions now? Okay, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing? You, Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to begin our discussion on these two new buildings that are joined but on separate tax lots. And we've had a whole discussion about typology, size and height, and design and materials. So we'll have our discussion now on those aspects. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start?
Can you go back to the view that showed the townhouse in the corner? Your building in it?
This one, or coming the other
One, where it's, there you go. Okay, that's good.
23,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. So I think that to the extent that the applicants have set out to bring the townhouse scale of the adjacent street in, they've succeeded. I think that the buildings relate better to the townhouse in the foreground of the image than they do to the rest of the block, which is rather distinctive and unusual in that it is a lower scale. It is predominantly garages and former garages, that have been turned into residences, carriage houses. And I also think that the applicant's choice of typology, he called out the fact that it's got a gap on both sides, right? So the gap on the right side is maybe not permanent. The gap on the left side is most likely permanent because that's the backyards, according to the tax map or the site map up above. It seems to belong to the townhouse that it's adjacent to. So the condition, even if one imagines the rest of the block developed fully, odds are that the gap between the buildings on the next corner and this particular set of buildings will always be this. There'll always be a gap. So with that in mind, I guess, architecturally, I think they're very cool. I think they're very interesting. They're very minimal. They're an interesting take on a kind of townhouse typology. I think it would have worked much better on a classic brownstone block where one had scale of that type, materiality that was relatively uniform. Here, you have a block that's very eclectic in its materials and colors, but rather uniform in its scale, or if not uniform, certainly diminutive, right? You have a row of, a couple of buildings that are two stories plus mansard. You have 1 story. It's you have across the street, you have 1 story, then you have some that are going to be just backyards to other buildings. It's a very interesting typology, but it's definitely not a brownstone scale. So I think that the concern that I would have about the application is, number one, the scale, the mass on the street. I don't think you can ever make that bridge to have it glom on to the adjacent street as opposed to belonging to the block itself. It's not a transitional building like we would see on a classic, I don't know, Chelsea or Upper West Side block where you have tenements, 6-story tenements on the avenue. Then you have a transitional brownstone at 4 stories, and then you go into a row of setback. That's not your condition here. Your condition here is a very different kind of typology. And so I don't think that the volume as it asserts itself works with the context. I also think that the choice of materiality, which I really like architecturally, it's neat. Whatever Peterson put in the architect's water, it's working. And, we've all been addicted to their products, trying to get our clients to use it. It's another thing, but it's a really interesting product. And I think it would look great in the 3-dimensionality that they want to do with it. But it doesn't work contextually, because what it does is it does what it's supposed to do, which is make the building minimal, right? Very simple, very monolithic, very heavy. And I think that on a block where you have a fairly high degree of detail and variation, it kind of feels like a blank, like a placeholder. And I don't think it works as a minimalist incursion into the context. It doesn't do enough. We've seen minimal projects in historic districts that work better, and I can't put my finger exactly on why, but I think this one isn't doing it. I also think that the scale of the windows, while I don't think the windows are necessarily too large or whatever, I don't mind the detail. We've seen that detail before. I think that the first floor slams into the ground in a way that feels like you kind of cut the building off at the knees. And it also doesn't do any favors to the relationship to the block. Granted that it's not a carriage house and that it's not trying to pretend to be a carriage house, but there are plenty of building types that have a differentiated opening on the ground floor that don't necessarily read as carriage houses. And the interesting thing about the Morphosis project that he showed as a reference is that, modern as it is, it works with the context in that it defines a base and a top, and it works with the context of the block by kind of signaling to the cornice line. This building does not do that, and so even though its aims as a minimal incursion, I think, are good, and we should support that, I don't think it's there yet in terms of the specifics of how it's been developed. So I'm eager to hear what other people say.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I agree and disagree with Commissioner Goldblum and probably get to the same conclusion. But if you look at this image here, I think first, modern is fine. I'm not criticizing that. But by making it one mass and 2 buildings that are identical, you're creating this big mass in a street which, as Commissioner Goldblum said, is broken up. If we start to look at this corner building, the mansard's a different color. The first thing I might look at is using a different brick on the mansard to see what that looked like. Secondly, and Commissioner Goldblum was getting to this a bit, is normally your ground floor, your entrance floor would be the highest floor to floor, and you have the lowest floor to floor. So as he was describing, it sort of looks like it's cut off at the knees. I describe it as someone squashed it down, and that needs to be higher. the other thing, by having the two buildings be identical, you make it into this one mass. And if you, I'd be curious to see if you then just change the brick color of the second building and did something with the mansard, I think you'd start to break down the mass and have it fit in with the adjacent buildings better. Finally, although the windows are a little strange because they're low. And where that really hurts is up in the mansard, because then you have a large amount of masonry above the windows, and that feels a little weird to me. And actually, for bringing light into the room, farther into the room, a higher window would be better. So I'm not sure the size is a problem, but it may be the location. And I think that covers my thoughts.
Commissioner Chen?
Interesting discussion. So just not to confuse the applicant. I think Commissioner Goldblum pointed out correctly that, you know, the building, the two buildings are standing, have a gap on either side. And obviously, as the testimony talked about the lot line windows, I have no problem with the lot line windows because it's as of right. And then if a future house come along, those lot lines get filled. Obviously, the opportunity present itself for the gap on the left side closest to us in this rendering, and I think that I think what both Commissioner Ginsburg and Goldblum was alluding to is about breaking up the masses a little bit, about the size and the scale and the proportion. And I leave it up to the applicant to work on that. I think, you know, whether the bulkhead could be reduced, I think on the top, and whether how you want to articulate delineation, the differentiation between the proportion and the scale and the proportions between the front and the side. And I think there are plenty of options there. So I will not play designer here.
Yes, please.
I'd also point out that the building on the corner is a corner lot, and under zoning, you could have 100% coverage. So somebody could build, it'd have to go through us and we'd have to agree, but those lot line windows could be blocked too at some future date.
All right. Vice Chair Bland.
Good luck with trying to translate all of our thoughts. And I have only gone halfway around the table. I have some other thoughts. Basically, I'm intrigued by this project, and I think it's very interesting. I am kind of a community focused guy, and I like it when people on the block who live there and have their whole lives there like what's happening. It doesn't seem to be that's the case right now. And so I'm aware of that. But on the other hand, I'm just speaking now as an architect and as an urban planner who's trying to think about what is appropriate right here. Yes, when you have two houses that are identical and you put them together, they make a bigger statement. But this occurs all over the city, all the time. And just looking at this, if this is accurate, I don't know this block in person well enough to say, but it seems to me as if the side of the big brownstone there that we're looking at in the foreground is as deep as the other buildings are wide. So it doesn't seem to me out of scale. Yes, it's against one no building and a low building on the other side. But this sort of missing tooth idea happens in an awful lot of blocks. I mean, hundreds of blocks of Brooklyn. It's not all consistent rows like Park Slope or parts of Brooklyn Heights. It really isn't. It's a polyglot. So that idea of variety doesn't seem inconsistent for me. So those are some of the urban planning and massing thoughts. Architecturally, to me, the biggest weakness is the first floor. I don't know what you do there, nor should I need to tell you. You'll figure that out if if this succeeds to the point where you're redoing parts of it. But something's all wrong there, I think. It just crashes in and it's like left over, not thought through. Frankly, even though everything lines up, everything doesn't always have to line up to be consistent. If you could push it back even 5 feet and just get a little relief, you might be able to do a little bit more. I don't know if that works or zoning or anything else about all of that, but just from it could help you. But architecturally, it needs to do something different down there as well. And I really love the Peterson brick. My firm has used it. Again, it's not easy to convince a developer client to use it, but it's a really wonderful product, and I'd like to see more of it. And I think it's being used inventively here, and I like that. Commissioner Ginsburg's idea of perhaps, and you didn't use the word subtly, but I would say subtly changing the color, same material, but maybe the color changes as it begins to be its mansard idea, and that could help with relieving some of the monotone quality of it. But it's mostly that lower floor, I think, that needs to be interpreted in some way that's consistent with the whole typology. I'm not suggesting, slapping a piece of brownstone in front of it and saying that's it and so forth. I think it's a difficult thing to come up with, but it needs more work there. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapin.
So I'm fine with the replacement of the existing building and the and then bulk in general, and a new building and a more modern building. I feel like this is a little bit looks like it's trying to fit in, but doesn't. And part of that is, as others have suggested, if you're going to go in the direction of a more traditional, or rather a more contextual, let's say, building, that the mansard doesn't, have any sense of separation, and there isn't. It might be. I'm okay also with a general material choice. If Commissioner Bland just suggested, instead of using a different material, or just maybe a color change or some smaller, slighter change. I feel like and so something about the windows also, which it may be driving down to the base as was suggested, but there's no hierarchy in the windows, which you would typically see in other kinds of situations, older buildings. Again, I don't have a problem with a modern building, and I sort of feel like either go a little bit more in the direction you're going to begin with, and be more adventurous, or if you're trying to fit in contextually, which is also good, to take a little bit more contextual items in terms of details or elements or materials, and pick up some of those from the context. So kind of go one way or the other a little more than you have already, I would say. And there are elements to this obviously that seem like they're working well. So there.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
Okay. So all of my colleagues have made terrific points here. I'm just going to sort of comment or note the ones that I personally think I want to reinforce that others have said. So the first thing I want to say, though, is that I really like the material. I think, in a neighborhood with a lot of brownstones and brick buildings, this material is fine. But I do believe that at the top of the building, it would be helpful to you because I'm calling it a building. It's two buildings. So I think what people are saying is the bulk is making it read as one building, and there in and of itself is a little bit of a problem. So I think you somehow want to be able to just differentiate them a little bit. But I also believe that if you put some kind of roof line in here, it will take away this sense of huge volume. And maybe it is just maybe it's a roof line, maybe it's just a change of material and mosh, which might do the same thing. I also think the bulkhead is too high. I mean, there's something about it that I feel like, why can't you just get rid of that? I realize you're trying to make a roof space there. They have a big backyard. I don't know. I think it's something to think about in terms of the bulk. The other thing that is, I'm not having a problem with the fact that, you know, the scale is small. You're close to the corner, but I am having a problem, and it's been mentioned by other people, with how this is hitting the ground. First of all, I feel like you are literally on the street. Like, there is no privacy here for the people who are ultimately going to live in it. So Fred, for example, said maybe you should set the building back just a little bit and have a little area way in the front. So there's a little, you know, the sense of not everyone is peering in through my window, which may not be a frosted window, but I still personally would not feel comfortable. It happens to be, they're deep, they're 65 feet deep. So they could use, I realize they're narrow, but they are deep. So maybe you could give away a little bit of space here and set them back a little bit and create an area that makes them feel that they're not accessible to everybody who walks down the street, especially people walking their dogs. And then I do think, and so I also feel like there's because of that, the windows on the lowest floor are a little problematic because they literally hit the ground. And a couple of people have mentioned, you know, possibly some differentiation in the heights of the windows. And look, you're going to be exploring things. I would explore that too. And that may in of itself make the character of the building a little more interesting, because, you know, you're starting out with an interesting thought here and can still be modern, but it might just make it work a little better.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Can we go to page 10? Great. So let's start with the concept of a building. They take a type, they make it into a volume, and then they say, I'm going to use two materials, brick and terracotta, and I'm going to put two buildings together. I'm going to make a minimal building with no decorations, minimal window detail, door detail, just simple. Then you look at the context, and in this context, you see that there's a corner building, there's a space, there's their building, there's another space. So this context, this idea of this rhythm of this block doesn't quite work that way. It seems to me that even if they made their building 3 stories, it wouldn't work with the block as well. Because of the space between the two buildings, it makes it distinct. It's a spatial separation from everything else. So the idea of the block doesn't matter anymore. It's a distinct object. And I think the minimal quality of it is really quite handsome. I do think the ground floor, windows, that minimal quality of it should be rethought somehow, especially the entry door. I was looking at it last night and I said, God, what an awful entry door it is. I mean, it's just have no character to it. And maybe they could emphasize at least some function of the door versus the window versus first floor window, second floor window. But they just went minimal, it's straight on. And I can appreciate that. And I think with some revisions of the front facade, the windows, the doors, I think the scale of it is fine. I think reducing it will not work as well. And I love the simple materiality of it, and it's in its own urban space.
All right, thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your thoughtful comments. So I think where we are today is we're not going to take an action. You've heard all of the comments about on this design, and I think many of them have to do with the larger context of the block. I think that some have recognized the gaps, maybe allow you to do something a little bit different, but there still could be some language or something that does connect it back. And I think we've heard a lot about scale, sort of the overall scale or the scale of the elements itself. And that's something that you can explore and think about how you want to study the sort of hierarchy and proportions of the windows, the subtle changes in materials and strategic places that help bring a scale to these two buildings and help them to fit within the streetscape. So we won't take an action today. You can continue to work with our great staff and they'll help you sort through all of the comments and get to the essence of it and come back to us with a revised proposal. All right, great. Thank you.
Just one more minute about two of the items.
No, the staff can talk to you afterwards. Okay, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 11, LPC 25-03002. Application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 2104, lot 20, 281 Adelphi Street in the Fort Greene Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built circa 1871. The application is to construct a rear yard addition.
Good afternoon. My name is Douglas Seguya. I am principal at Oso Architecture and am going to be presenting on behalf of our clients for a small rear yard extension at their property at 281 Adelphi Street in the Fort Greene Historic District. Sorry, so here's the lot in the block. It's right in front of the school play yard. On the left, we'll get there shortly, is DeKalb. That's the one spot where you have a little bit of visibility. It will show you, and the rest of it is not visible for any of the other streets. Here's just a simple plan. There's really no work on the interior. Other than just the connection. There's currently a stair down to the garden. It's a really long garden. I think it's 72 feet deep currently. Well, it will always be 72 feet deep. From the back or from the outermost point of the proposal to the garden will be 59 feet when it's constructed. So one of the client's requests was such a long garden. They're really trying to use that more. They moved in, we finished the renovation on the interior just before COVID. So they got there just in time and got to enjoy the garden, but now want to know how to enjoy that or be able to enjoy that more. So here you see just a simple study of the volume. There's tucked up close to the building. We have 2 floors it's over. And then you have this small garden room that's off the back of that. Here is a map showing you 3 different points to possibly see the proposal. 4 at the corner there, you actually can't see it. So just sort of showing you that you don't get a shot through there. The other 2 here at the bottom, just above the Good Joy restaurant, you have just a sliver of a view that we'll show you in a little bit. To give you a sense, our building 281 is the 6th building in from DeKalb. It's the last one kind of there in that, not the row, but that are all the same height. Here's a view from 2014. There's the parking structure here at the end that you can just make out. We've put a red box around it because it's a little difficult to make out through the fence there. But that would be that sort of 2-story portion of our proposal that you see. The reality is this is not what it looks like today. I'll show you an image of that in a moment. So you can't actually see it now. There's an illegal addition on top of that, but at some point that would probably be removed and you could see it. Here is just a study of the block showing you all the various additions. There's quite a few on the block. We've broken it down at the top, just talking through the different types of additions as best we can tell. There's 72%, or there's 72% of them have some form of addition on the back of them. Here are some photos from the back garden. You can see the various facades just in our row. Some are brick, some are painted brick, some are stucco. So it's really a variety of finishes on the garden side. Just a bird's eye view to kind of place you in the space a little bit better. And here's a rendering of our proposal. So it's really, there's a couple things happening. It's the little addition as well as the 2 sliders that open down into the lower garden area that's recessed there. And then you take a few steps up and you're in this little garden room. And then just inside that in the 2-story area is the stair down. It has a stucco finish on it. And let's see about it. Here are some 2D drawings for you. Here is a perspective from DeKalb across the street, and you can see we've just tried to show you just that little sliver at the very top that you can see. And that is it.
All right, thank you. Questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, just given the diversity of, backgrounds, how did you decide on the color for the stucco? What does it relate to from your perspective?
There's a few things. And the clients, we initially looked at brick, but there's such an assortment of brick. And the rear facade of this building there's quite a few. Let me actually go back to the. It's kind of hard to tell, but the brick has been patched a lot. And so we wanted to figure out how do you, rather than trying to match that because it's not in great shape, how do we create something that feels like it belongs, but amidst the backdrop that is pretty varied. And so we thought, let's just make it as simple and clean as possible. And there are the two. The one adjacent is actually painted brick, but the one next to that is stucco. And so it's not, it's in some ways in contrast to our building, but in the row it's there.
Yeah, I understood the issue of doing stucco. I was wondering if you were thinking of painting the building because it sort of stands out in color from the, and some of the others are painted gray. So I just wondered how the color choice came about.
I think long-term they probably would have an interest in painting it, but as of right now, there are owners that have the 2 top floors, so that'd be something they have to agree together for that. So
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner
Just one
Jefferson.
quick one. In your perspectives, you don't show the fire escape. Are you removing them or they are?
the fire escape remains. We just
Okay.
didn't spend the time modeling it.
All right, any other questions? Okay, let's move to public testimony, and I don't think there's anyone in the room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HGC finds this addition's modest scale to be appropriate, but we feel the proposed materials draw undue attention to themselves. We believe brick would be more appropriate here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised for this item, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends conditional approval with that condition that the materiality and color of the exterior finish of the extension be considered in conjunction with the partner organizations who gave input. And we also received letters from the Society for Clinton Hill, CRNP, and the Fort Greene Association. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if there was a discussion about the color at the community board that you can respond to.
They brought it up. They also brought up windows. We had more windows on the addition, and they were had asked if we could reduce the number of windows. We actually removed a whole strip that was down that two-story addition before coming in. We had a conversation with the clients on the stucco. I think they felt like they understood their neighbors had a preference for brick. We did, as I said, we did study them. We also shared with them. We did studies initially with the brick, but we felt like the brick, it almost felt the brick on brick just didn't, to us, felt less appropriate. We preferred the contrast with the brick. So personal preference.
All right, thank you. All right, commissioners, any final questions? Let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg. Would you second that
Second.
motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. So this is for a very small addition on a portion of the rear facade, almost sort of as its own object. So that may be some way to think about the stucco material in this context. The applicant has shown, of course, other facades that have stucco or light colored paints. And it has very minimal visibility from decal. You can just catch the top of it, but otherwise it's not visible from any public thoroughfare, and it's not deeper or bigger than any other additions in the rear yard. Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
Sure. It's a modest addition, and they did a nice job with it, coming down the stairs and then stepping down into the garden, making 2 levels. And the only issue is the form itself, and the color, how it's attached to the color is the issue.
Color.
And it just seems to be just tacked onto the wall. And there was just
Okay.
a different form.
Yeah.
If they change the color, it would be more harmonious with the existing.
So
facade.
maybe a different color stucco that would be more harmonious with the brick, or because I understand
Yeah,
the point that
brick would work, but it would still, brick would work.
okay. Commissioner Goldblum?
It looks like it was built before landmarks designated the neighborhood. It has the look of this kind of ad hoc construction that we see a lot of, and in a funny way, that makes it appropriate because you see a lot of it. But I think that I do think that it does kind of pull itself away from the building and make it. The funny thing is that as a volume, it's a very typical brown, townhouse accretion that would have been seen on original buildings, and it would always have been brick. So just from kind of, just squinting at it from a distance, like look at the site plan, that's kind of what you would normally see is this little L that, maybe was a couple of stories, one or 2 stories, and that was an outbuilding or, a bathroom or a kitchenette or something. I think the brick is the way to go. I really do. And I think it's otherwise appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
In general, I think this is all right, although I again think there may be an issue with the color. I might look at if you kept the stucco, and I realize they're not all quite the same color, but the lintels over the windows, I don't think I want to do a red stucco that, because it wouldn't work, but you could possibly take a key off the lintels over the window for the color as a way to make it work. And although the addition's were often brick. They were also often wood in the older ones. And
Yeah, I was thinking like a little porch addition might be
and-
very contrasting.
I realize you probably can't use wood, but you could look at a fiber cement board or something as another way to go. But in general, I think it's fine. And I'd say just working with staff if others agree.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
As Commissioner Ginsburg just said, there are many ways to go on this one. This is very modest and small, and as Michael Goldblum just said, yeah, one would typically find in the rear yard accretions on this type of timber. I am not going to confuse the matter any further by suggesting whether it's brick, whether it's stucco color. I would like to hear what the rest of the commission had to say.
All right, Vice Chair Bland.
Set me up.
Yeah.
I think stucco's wrong. It looks tacked on and I think it would look cheap. I think brick, or as it just was suggested, a wood clapboard look with hardy board or some product like that is approvable. And then plant some ivy.
All right, Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, so I think it's a very modest little addition. It's minimally visible. And I mean, I could have gone along with the stucco, but then I would like to see some color that matches up better. And I think the brick is fine from my point of view, as long as they can find something that, just doesn't stand out too much. It'd be fine.
All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree that it's modest. I also agree that there's an issue with the white. So I think the brick idea is a great idea. And I also think this kind of a wood clapboard look would be very nice too.
Okay. All right, so I think, why don't we make a motion to approve it with the modification that they continue to work with the staff on the materials? Yep.
-03002, 281 Adelphi Street, Fort Greene Historic District. Applications to construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Fort Greene Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will be kept with the depth and height of other rear yard additions found within the block. I will not overwhelm the building or diminish the central green space. The design and materiality of the rear yard addition, featuring stucco cladding and metal windows and doors assembly, will be in keeping with the residential character of the building and other buildings in the block. That the off-white stucco, that the off-white, which I shouldn't.
Yeah, let's
Take
leave
that
that
out,
one
yeah.
out. Yeah.
The only small portion of the addition will be visible from DeKalb Avenue over a commercial extension against the backdrop of other rear yard additions, and will have a minimal visual impact on the streetscape. And the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historical character of the building of the Fort Greene District. I recommend approval. Where's that?
However.
No, I recommend approval, and that the
applicant
architect should work with the staff to go through to review materiality of the rear facade.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Goldblum. Would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Please continue to work with the staff, and we'll move to the next item.
All right, next item is public hearing item number 12, LPC 25-04456. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 261, lot 51, 50 Garden Place in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is an eclectic style row house built in 1861 to 79. Application is to lower the areaway, install ironwork, and modify window openings and infill.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lacey Williams, Preservation Staff. The item before you is for 50 Garden Place, located on the west side of the street between State Street and Joralemon Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Here you see the 1940s tax photo on the left and the existing condition on the right. By the time of the tax photo, many houses in the row had the historic cast iron areaway railings and stoop railings replaced with stucco-clad low walls. Here's the house within the streetscape, and this proposal has two components. The first component is at the front facade, which includes excavating the entire areaway approximately 5 feet, installing bluestone paving and steps, replacing the knee wall with ironwork, and modifying the basement level windows by dropping the sills. Here are the proposed plan and sections of the lowered areaway and enlarged windows. And these photos and diagrams show other houses in the row where the areaway was lowered and the windows were enlarged, 2 of which were approved by the commission at 40 and 46 Garden Place. And you can also see that the knee walls at these houses have been replaced with ironwork, and 50 Garden Place is currently only 1 of 2 houses in the row where the knee wall still remains. The second component is at the rear facade of the existing rear extension shown on the left. A permit was previously issued pursuant to the commission's rules to combine the modified opening at the first floor with the openings at the basement level and install new infill. However, under the commission's rules, a 12-inch high spandrel must be installed in these types of modified openings to mark the level of the missing floor. The proposal today is to reduce the height of the spandrel from 12 inches to 6 inches. And here are some details of that spandrel, as well as some photos of the rear facade. This is seen from State Street, which show that there may be some seasonal minimal visibility. And the applicant is available on Zoom to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions on this one? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? No. Okay, so no one in the room would like to speak, so I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being Judy Stanton from the Brooklyn Heights Association. Judy Stanton, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Judy Stanton speaking for the Brooklyn Heights Association. Can't access my camera, so I don't think you can see me, but it doesn't matter, I'm here.
That's okay.
Brooklyn Heights Association Landmarks Committee has reviewed this proposal for 50 Garden Place, and we've considered its effect in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, and we support it entirely. Thank you very much. I should also, in full disclosure, tell everybody, Fred already knows that I live next door. So I have great interest in how they do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your testimony. I don't see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So I think, is the applicant on Zoom? Is that? Okay, I'm not sure if the applicant would like to say anything before we move to our discussion. I think it's a fairly straightforward application. But if, is it Stephen McNamara?
Yeah.
Would you like to
That's
say
okay.
anything? Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we'll close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the hearing is closed and this application has 2 components. One is to lower the areaway at the front of the building to provide more ease of access down into the basement level entry by creating sort of two sets of stairs in a lower grade. And the applicant's presentation shows that other areaways within this row have been similarly altered to with commission approvals. And then at the rear facade, modifying the design of the proposed fenestration on the existing rear yard addition to have a thinner spandrel than would otherwise be allowed at staff level. And I think, the staff level rules are fairly conservative and prescriptive so that the work can be delegated to the staff. But certainly this commission has reviewed lots of different configurations of double height openings and different ways of breaking down that fenestration. And so I think this is not that inconsistent. So, Commissioner Bland, would you like to start?
Well, Judy, I wasn't going to tell everybody that you live next door, but since you did, she knows the project very well, of course, and I do too. This is a very modest proposal, given what they're asking for, and very reasonable. I think lowering the front yard as it is slightly to make ease into the under the stoop easier is very reasonable and has been done in other parts of this very block. And the rear yard, the rear facade, going from a 12-inch approval could be done by staff to a 6-inch approval they're requesting, to me is a no-brainer. This is not visible from any public thoroughfare. Many of those rear yards, this is a beautiful street, by the way. I would say one of the most beautiful streets in all of New York City. It's 1 block long and it's contained on both ends visually. So it's one of the most cohesive blocks you'll ever see. Beautiful trees and beautiful gardens. So I think this is wholly appropriate.
Thank you. And just in the interest of time, does anyone have a different opinion or something they'd like to add? So I think everybody is in agreement. A no-brainer. Thank you, Commissioner Chen. Okay. Vice Chair Bland, would you make the motion?
Well, read it, a no-brainer. In the matter of 50 Garden Place, the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, this is an application to lower the areaway, install ironwork, and modify window openings and infill. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Recommend approval, noting that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that there is a precedent for lowered and altered areaways at buildings in this row and within the historic district, and that the excavation will be in keeping with the depths and configurations of the varied areaways found on the block, that the materials, details, and design of the proposed areaway and facade treatment featuring bluestone pavers and steps and brownstone tinted stucco walls, curbs, and base details will harmonize with the building and the streetscape, that the proposed ironwork is simply designed and will be in keeping with other ironwork found on this block in terms of materials and finish, that the proposed elongated basement windows will maintain the decorative head of the masonry openings, and that the length and proportions will not detract from the overall fenestration, that the infill at the enlarged opening at the rear extension will include a horizontal mullion to mark the level of the missing floor plate, and the scale of the building of the opening will be broken down by multiple windows and doors with the assembly, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the historic district.
Thank you, Commissioner Chen. Would you second that motion?
Second.
Right. Mark?
Commissioner Carroll,
Aye. Sorry.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi. 7 in favor, none opposed, the motion passed.
All right. So that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next up is public hearing item number 13, LPC 25-02910. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1959, lot 24, 395 Clermont Avenue in the Fort Greene Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built circa 1869, and the application is to replace windows and construct a rear yard addition.
Hi, good, thanks for your patience and thanks for seeing us. My name is Lloyd Huber. I'm principal for LMH Architecture. Project is 395 Clermont Avenue in the Fort Greene Historic District. You can see location is shown in red. It's bordering on Fulton Streets, Clermont, Vanderbilt, and Green Street. The scope that we're bringing in front of you is twofold. One is window replacement at the front and rear facades, and a 9-foot extension at the rear. This is a neighborhood map, and you can see there's a 1940 tax photo. This tax photo shows a 1/1 configuration, but we are proposing to change that to 2/2 configuration to make it more historically accurate. This is the project location. You can see it's kind of on the north side of Clermont Avenue. There's currently, I think, 21 extensions out of 60. So we're on 30%, 33%. This is a view of our front elevation. You can see a 2/2 configuration at 393 to the west, also 391 further to the west also has 2/2, and to the right you can see a replaced 1/1 configuration. This is our soon to be hopefully much more beautiful rear facade. 397 at the left, 395, and then 393. There's an existing fire escape. This is a drawing of the existing front elevation. This is a drawing of the proposed front elevation. As mentioned, we're going from 1/1 to 2/2. And it shows it's a little bit difficult to see, but we're proposing aluminum clad wood windows. That's a rear facade existing to the left, proposed to the right. You can see the 9-foot extension. We have offsets from either side of 1 foot, 10 inches. Glazed facade on the parlor floor and a glass door on the ground floor. 1/1 window replacements up on top. On the second and third floors. This is the proposed front elevation, more window details. Our horizontal window section shows we're keeping the existing, pardon me, so on the left you see the existing horizontal window section, on the right you see proposed. So in this configuration, we're keeping the existing brick mold. It's also a little bit difficult to see, but that's planned to be kept and to be painted black to match the window frame. This is our existing vertical window section on the left and our proposed vertical window section on the right, again, keeping the existing brick mold. Some more window information showing the color of the windows, which is ebony. Context, proposed elevation showing the adjoining buildings. Here you can see more detailed proposed extension. So we're proposing 9 feet for 2 floors. That's 360 square feet. That still keeps us below the allowed 4,000 square feet floor area. Side elevation showing the extension, stair to the rear. And some adjoining property photos, 391, 393. More context photos from the back, showing some additional extensions. Again, additional extensions at 407. And at 417. And this is across the way on Vanderbilt, 394, 396. This is actually, I think, a 3-story extension. Method.
All right, any questions, commissioners? Let's move to public testimony. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? John Graham.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. The Victorian Society supports this applicant's proposal to construct a two-story rear yard addition. The work will not be visible from any public way. It is similar in scale to other rear yard additions on this block and will not significantly reduce the green space within the dome. It will require removing only a minimal amount of stucco-clad masonry on the third floor, create a door opening leading to the new rear deck, and it will leave intact the dentelated cornice at the top floor, which we see in the applicant's photo matching the cornices at the adjacent houses. What we don't support is the applicant's proposal to replace the 1/1 double hung windows on the front facade with 2/2 windows. Commissioners, the designation report states that 395 Clermont is one of a row of 6 Italianate style row houses, 395 to 405, built in 1869. The applicants have provided the tax photo for 2 of them, 395 to 397. I decided to look at the rest. The tax photos we've attached to our written testimony show that all 6 houses in this row had 1/1 double hung windows in 1939. Installing 2/2 windows on the front facade of 395 Clermont would visibly and significantly diminish the unity of this row and isn't based on evidence. We ask you to deny this part of the proposal. Tax photos were attached to our testimony, but in case they didn't get through, I have copies here.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the item? Noting that there isn't, I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I have promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this proposal to be inadequately documented for us to be able to properly judge its appropriateness. Specifically, the 2/2 windows on the front facade might be appropriate, but the presentation does not present enough evidence to judge. Additionally, the rear extension does not provide enough specific detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So would you like to respond to the comments about the windows, the configuration?
Yes, we originally actually had 1/1, and then in consultation with your teams, we changed that to 2/2, believing that that was actually the correct historical character. So as you can see, the adjoining properties actually are 2/2. To us, honestly, our intent is to make it historically accurate. We are happy with 1/1 or 2/2.
I
We
guess
would
the
like
staff
to-
advised them to do 2/2.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the case exactly or not, but I will say I think it's generally known that this particular period of time when the building was constructed is right at the cusp of when glass technology was just becoming available in America, not for the highest class projects, but for any projects where you might have gotten a 1/1 window, but it's very borderline. And it is 6 in a row that I think do show the 1/1. It's not entirely impossible that all 6 of those could have replaced and upgraded their windows, but probably likely they did not all of them do that. So I think the applicant is willing to do either one and is asking if they wanted 2/2 to see if that's also appropriate. It is an Italianate style building, so even if that wasn't the original configuration, it is a configuration that certainly was used at other Italianate style buildings, including the ones I think to either side of this group of 6.
Yeah, the 2 existing buildings, I think 391 and 393 both have 2/2 right now, recently redone. And
Although
then
it-
the right is 1/1.
It looks in the tax photo like the building to the left had 2/2 double hung windows. Different row. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so this is as Corey said, this is the period where it really could have been either configuration. The glass technology was just changing. And so see in the tax photo of the house in a different row, but built in the same time, had 2/2 double hung windows. And so I think that we can think about whether, I think the applicant is willing to do 1/1 or 2/2, so we can discuss that in our comments. All right, let's close the hearing and get to those comments. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Okay, or first, okay. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so this is an application for window replacement, as we've just discussed on the front facade. They would be window inserts, and so the wood brick mold would be retained, and then they would be aluminum clad. The proposal is for 2/2 double hung windows to be consistent with the age and style, but as we've seen in the tax photos, 1/1s were also used at that time and did exist in the tax photo for this building. And then at the back, we have a 9-foot deep, 2-story rear yard addition that is clad in stucco and comparable to the additions found elsewhere in the block. So Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I'll start with the easy part, the rear yard addition's fine. As to the windows, I could go either way, depending on what the other commissioners say, and I understand that the applicant would do either. So I don't have a strong opinion. I might go for the 2/2, but I'm fine with the 1/1.
Okay. Commissioner Chen.
Exactly the same here.
Vice Chair Plant.
I'm agnostic. I think Corey knows much more about this than we do, so maybe Corey should be the one.
You have a vote?
Yeah,
Commissioner Chapin.
I was going to say, obviously all the windows could have been changed in the other houses, but it's probably most likely that they were 1/1, I guess. And, the applicant's trying to do the right thing and go with whatever's historical. So if that's the perception that that's the historical situation, we should just approve 1/1 for them. And
Okay.
maybe the staff could then just verify that. If there's any way to verify it, if there isn't, fine.
Okay. Which actually would make this application staff level. All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, so I think that's a perfect approach, Diana.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
Construct a rear yard addition, appropriate. Replace windows, I leave it to Corey.
All right, so just from if we think that the historic windows were 1/1 and the proposal is to do aluminum clad 1/1 window inserts with retaining the wood brick mold. No, they don't need to do that, but that's actually what they're proposing. So, all right, but the aluminum clad wood windows for a building that historically had 1/1 windows can have a staff level permit. So for the purposes of our action today, should we just make a motion to approve the rear yard addition? Okay.
My understanding, is the commissioners are basically agreeing, I think, that it's most likely a 1/1 with the historic configuration. That's what the applicant is willing to do.
So we don't.
1/1. Sure. Yeah, so I think we have to.
We don't have to vote on the windows, so we'll make a motion to approve the rear yard addition.
Okay. With regards to LPC 25 dash.
There's one thing from a timing perspective, is this going to change our overall schedule to come back?
No.
You're good to go after.
You're good to go.
With regards to LPC 25-03814, 183 Dean Street, Borum Hill Historic District, a late Italianate style row house built in 1868-69. Application is to construct a rear yard addition. And is there a modification of the front areaway? No, okay, it said that here, that's why. Okay, I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Borum Hill Historic District. I recommend approval that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will not be.
The wrong motion.
Yeah, it's item 13.
Oh, sorry. Did I? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll start over again. I'll get it right. LPC 25-02910, 395 Clermont Avenue, Fort Greene Historic District, an Italianate row house built circa 1869 application is to replace windows and construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Fort Greene district. I recommend approval that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features. I'm not talking about the windows, so that the change in material from wood to metal clad windows will not discernible from the street. The proposed two-story rear addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the addition will be in keeping with the depth and height of other rear yard additions found within the block and therefore will not overwhelm the building or diminish the central green space, that the design and materiality of the rear yard addition featuring stucco cladding, metal windows, and door assembly will be in keeping with the residential character of the building and other buildings in the block, that the white finished stucco cladding at the rear addition will harmonize with the painted facade at the upper stories, and the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Fort Greene Historic District.
Second.
Chair Carroll. Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
7 in favor, none opposed, the motion.
Thank you. Final item.
All right, last item is public hearing item number 14, LPC 25-03814, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 189, lot 47, 183 Dean Street in the Borum Hill Historic District. This is a late Italianate style row house built 1868-69. The application is construct a rear yard addition and modify the front areaway.
Good afternoon, now evening. Thank you for letting me present today. I appreciate it. My name is Douglas Gautier of Gautier Architects. I'm here to present a proposed project for the 183 Dean Street in Brooklyn. The proposed project is a rear yard extension of 16 feet at the basement level with a 10-foot extension at the parlor floor level. The second component of the project is to lower a portion of the front areaway to align with the existing basement floor level. These images right here show the current building, the 1940s building, and basic landmark information. This drawing is a plan of the Dean Pacific Street donut. It shows the base buildings and extensions color-coded by height. The red sight lines also show that this proposed project is not visible from the Bond or Pacific Street sites. There's a small break in the donut at the Bond Street side. There's a large break at Pacific, but neither of those have access to this location. Of the 42 buildings on the donut, 27 of them have extensions. Of those 27, 12 of them are 16 feet or over. Please note that the buildings near 183 Green, Dean, 177, 185, and 187 are similar in size and massing and have LPC approved extensions. This is in some ways a redundant slide showing the 12 buildings that have 16 feet or greater extension. These are just the images to confirm that it's not, that this project won't be visible from either of these openings in the donut. This image is a panorama of the rear yard facades for Pacific Street. Note that the buildings with red address indicators have 16 feet or deeper extensions. This is the Dean Street side of the donut. Again, the buildings with red address indicators have 16 feet or deeper extensions. 183 Dean Street is a co-op with 2 sets of owners. This project is for the owners of the cellar, basement, and parlor floors.
No work except for the HVAC equipment upgrade is to be done in the cellar floor. These drawings are the existing and proposed plans for the basement level. The owners see this as their forever home and want to expand and renovate the basement floor to 3 bedrooms with direct rear yard access. They have a 3-month-old child that's pushing this project. These drawings show the existing proposed plans for the parlor floor. This proposal provides expanded kitchen, dining, and office spaces, along with the roof terrace and garden access stair. This is the second level of the building, and these drawings show the existing and proposed plans. The owner of the lower floors proposed a finished roof terrace for the use of their friends, the other co-op.
Really? That was nice.
And this is the existing building section. It shows the removal work required in the front and rear of the building. It's a little bit, I'm sorry, it's a little bit dark in the front, but there's a green demo hatching in that front, same as in the rear. This proposed building section in the rear of the basement extends 16 feet and down 2 feet in order to get the greater height in the bedroom spaces. The front areaway shows the portion that's to be removed the 24 inches to match the existing garden level. Now we're switching back to the areaway side. This is basically the existing facades with the areaway to be removed indicated. And this is the proposed street elevation that shows the areaway lowered for 183. Note that both 181 and 185 have been recently renovated with LPC approved lowered areaway. There's also a lowered areaway at 161 Dean in this area. So these in the center is 183 as is, and on either side is the left side is 181, the right side is 185. So that these lowered areaways, like in the last proposal, provide easier access to the garden level. And there's this added extra desire to hold 3 New York City approved garbage bins, the recycling bins. And so you see at 181, they actually could put a flower table to cover it up and hide it and give some level of control to this reality of life. These are the drawings and sections for this areaway as is and as proposed, with the stairs going down, the planter up to the other side and holding it up. Now we're back in the rear facade. This elevation shows basically the area that needs to be removed in order to make this proposal happen. We are removing the bottom portion of the fire escape, and it would be provided with a gooseneck permanent stair with a gate at the second floor level, and then the egress will be continued all the way with the stair at the back. This is showing the massing of the Dean Street side of the donut, and you see there's a clump of sort of larger scale massing at this level. We just may not agree with it. We like the 16 feet on the bottom. It's hidden by the fence, and the 10-foot seems to hold the line of the predominant extensions in the donut. But there are 4 or 5 of them that are this deep. Here's the existing condition of the rear facade, and here's the proposal as built. We're big fans of the clapboard siding as a part of the extension. The neighbors are quite fond of their neighbor at 181 that has it's a black hardy board clapboard siding black railings, and then the windows are all wood, Austrian triple glazed, super high energy, yada, yada, yada type of windows that they really are excited about. And this is just showing that the clapboard siding does exist in the neighborhood, both on buildings and on extensions. And then this is the last slide that shows, I think the axonometric is a clear delineation of the scope of work proposed with the fire escapes in operation, and the relationship of the sort of twinning between 181 and 185 that their desire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Not seeing any questions, and I'm not seeing anyone in the room to testify, so I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If you'd like to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button now. Okay, I do not see any hands raised, so I will just note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, so I think we can probably move to our discussion if there are no other questions. All right, Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? So move.
So move.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so similar to two applications that we just saw, the application before the last application that we saw, this is for modifications to the areaway at the front to lower it to provide functionality, which is, and there are a couple other, I think 2 others in the row that have been lowered similarly. And then the construction of a 2-story rear yard addition, which fits within the depth and height of the additions within this grouping of the buildings on this block. And the ground floor is deeper, but we have approved that kind of stepped configuration in the past with the ground floor because it is concealed, largely concealed at the garden level. So Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to take this one?
Well, I think the applicant is helping to form like a very consistent row in the back and in a way in the front. I'm just going to start with the back and say, number one, I think the addition is very handsome. And I don't have a problem with the depth, which is consistent, as you said, Sarah, with what some of the other neighboring additions, the materiality, the color, they're all going to look related, and also the fact that it's been lowered. And then in the front, you know, we've approved the similar work in the surrounding buildings to lower the areaway, and also use of materials that you're using, and I can approve that as well. I think it's very well done.
Commissioner Jefferson?
The rear facade, construct a rear yard addition, appropriate, and I think the color, the black color works very well with the neighbor. I think it's a nice composition. In terms of the modified front areaway, absolutely.
All right.
And I love the new tree pit.
Yeah, great. Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree, appropriate, and I also appreciate the triple glazed yada yada windows.
Great. Commissioner Chen.
Share the same yada yada.
Okay. Vice Chair Bland.
Mr. Gautier, you have the distinction of presenting to us the last application for the year of 2024. And you go out on a high point, I think. It's a very handsome addition to the rear, appropriate in the front, and altogether a very nice application, very nice design. And in a way, it's too bad it can't be seen from the public thoroughfare because it's very handsome.
Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I can approve the excavation, the areaway, and the basement and the rear application, which is in line with other approvals we've made.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have a consensus. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make the motion?
In the matter of docket 25-03814, 183 Dean Street, Borum Hill Historic District, a late Italianate style row house built in 1868-69. The application is to construct a rear yard addition and modify the front areaway. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Borum Hill Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfares, that the two-story addition will not rise to the full height of the building, thereby maintaining a sense of the building's original volume, that the dark gray painted cladding and multi-light window and door assemblies of the addition will be in keeping with those of other additions found within the block, including at an adjoining house, that the addition will feature wide end piers and a solid to void ratio and level of articulation that is consistent with the design of existing rear yard additions within the block and the historic district, that the addition will match the height and depth of existing rear yard extensions within the row and will not diminish the central green space, that the proposed areaway excavation and alterations will be consistent with other modified areaways within the row, that the reconfigured bluestone paved areaway and proposed brownstone stucco clad planter will feature typical areaway materials and finishes, and that the proposed work will not detract from the significant historic and architectural character of the building or the historic district.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
No second.
Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Bland. Aye. Mr. Chapin,
Aye.
Mr. Chen,
Aye.
Mr. Ginsburg,
Aye.
Mr. Jefferson,
Aye.
Mr. Lutfi.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, the motion passed.
All right, that's approved. That's a wrap for 2024.
Thank you, Commissioners, for such a late
Thank
day.
you. I know. Thank you all for your long and hard work today. It's much appreciated, and we'll see everybody in January.